would like to call the January 25th, 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting to order. The town of Acton, in response to the coronavirus pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Acton Board of Health, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC. The town hall is closed to the public. This meeting will be streamed online on the ActonTV YouTube live channel, and audio will be broadcast live on the radio on WAEM 94.9 FM. To participate remotely from a computer, use the link to join the public meeting at actonma.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. Computer and app users may use the quote raise the hand feature to request to speak. We do have a hearing at 7:10. Are there any citizen concerns?
There are, John, and you indicated that I could read a statement before the citizens' concerns. Is that right?
I said, well, yes. That was in conjunction with something else that I asked, but in that, in that note that we exchanged.
So, can I read a statement?
That wasn't the intent of the note. I will give you a chance in member minutes to read your statement.
Okay.
Okay. I sense that there is going to be some conflictual comments coming, and I ask people to be civil and respectful in delivering your remarks. So let's begin.
Sarah Coletti, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah Coletti from Willow Street, Mass. I'm Jewish in the congregation of Beth Elohim. Last week, I had the joy and honor and support of many townspeople, both in and out of our congregation, to bring a program in honor of Martin Luther King Day, where Black and brown and white voices were heard in speech and song. It was a great group to be working with at a time when images of rancor, destruction, and white supremacy were playing out on TV. I would like to talk about healing from racist, anti-Semitic, or anti-Muslim incidents that occur in our town or to our townspeople. As Peter Light said in his excellent statement, what we own is our response to racism. A few years back, there was, elsewhere in our country, a shooting at a synagogue where people were worshiping. It is truly a shame for our country that I am unable to remember which shooting it was. Was it Poway or Pittsburgh? On that Friday, congregants arrived to services at Congregation Beth Elohim shaken. There were a bunch of people outside the doors, something that was a little unnerving at first. But as we drew closer, we could see the people were holding signs of support, of love. It was people and clergy from other faiths and places of worship come together to support us in our fear and grief. It brought tears to my eyes. That was healing. When Nazi graffiti was painted on high school grounds, the evidence was quickly painted over. But our rabbi and other clergy quickly called an interfaith gathering to rededicate the space, to sing and pray together on the high school field. Though the attendance was light, that was healing. We are not going to eliminate racism or anti-Semitism in our town or in the world any more than we can eliminate disease. Sometimes we may find the perpetrator, and sometimes the punishment or education may work to rehabilitate that individual. But what we need to do as a community always is to support those harmed by these incidents incidents that may or may not originate in Acton. We need to listen to understand that one racial attack or slur carries with it the pain of past affronts and of historical wrongs. The impact of a Nazi symbol or of the N-word is felt regardless of the age, location, or motivation of the creator. Let's not deny or diminish the experiences of our neighbors and our children. Let us support them. Let's keep our focus, like so many in our schools and in the community are doing, on making Acton a place where Black people want to live or work. We'll all be better for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Leo Foxman, please go ahead.
Hi, Leo Foxman, Wright Terrace in Acton. And again, in agreement with the Select Board, I deplore and denounce the vulgar and hateful racist messages to the school committee members. I do admit that there is racism in Acton, but I don't agree that Acton is a racist town. The only people that I hear saying that there is no racism in Acton are the people accusing others of saying it. While I do not have enough time to list all that Acton town staff and volunteers do to make Acton a wonderful town to live in, it is because of this community spirit that I was not surprised at the support that volunteers on the school committee received after the racist and evil Zoom bombing during 2 school committee meetings. What I was surprised at was how, without any evidence, a member of the select board, the superintendent of schools, and many others used this event to attack and try to silence a group of people that believe that the colonial name is historical, not racist. During the BOS emergency meeting of December 18th, when referring to the individuals that Zoom bombed the school committee meeting, a member stated, "These individuals have been egged on by the anti-school committee, mostly white men, trying to reinstate the mascot." The group is not anti-school committee. They just disagree with the rushed decision to retire the colonial name. He has also continued his assault on the people that want to discuss reinstating the colonial name. This BOS member did this with no evidence. Others on the school board acknowledged that they had no information and should not jump to hasty conclusions. On January 13, Chief Burrows announced that the Acton Police Department has made progress in its investigation of the Zoom bomber and have identified a juvenile male in Arizona that has no apparent connection to Acton or Boxborough as a suspect. While this information should not curtail any town initiatives to eradicate racism in our town, it should highlight that we should not jump to conclusions and attack individuals with no evidence. I contacted the BOS member who hastily jumped to conclusions and wrote, "Now that there is an alleged perpetrator that was behind the racist comments at the school committee meeting, would you consider apologizing for that hateful comments during the BOS emergency meeting?" The select board member responded, "Thank you for contacting me, but all my statements were true and correct, and I fully stand behind them." Mr. David Martin, you wrote your statement that your statement was true. Please share your evidence that this suspected Zoom bomber from Arizona with no apparent connection to Acton or Boxborough was egged on by the individuals that want to reinstate the colonial name. If not, I believe as a select board member, you owe me and others an apology for making statements without evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Is there another? Linda Vieira?
Yes, Linda Vieira. I'm
David,
speaking.
you're muted.
Sorry, I just let Linda Vieira go. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Linda Vieira, Great Elm Way. I'm speaking on behalf of Indivisible Acton Area Steering Committee, a group committed to working for social change and racial justice. We strongly recommend to Chair Benson and this board to move forward in compliance with your statement issued in November of 2020 called Acton Policy Against Racism. We hope you meant what you said in that policy and are thinking about what action you can take today, next week, next month to implement this policy without waiting for the DEIC. An immediate action you could take is to review all open positions in town administration to see how DEI considerations could be factored into the job descriptions and hiring of those positions. For example, there is an opening for a human service officer position advertised on the town website that you could apply that policy to right now. You could also incorporate DEI considerations into relevant positions in town administration and assign responsibilities and accountability for those considerations to specific town positions. In addition, please consider establishing a registrar or other reporting and recording mechanisms for town residents to report civil incidents of harassment based on racial, ethnic, religious, natural origin, or gender factors so that the town leadership and the management can update their understanding of current conditions. We can't move forward without recognizing that change is necessary, but hopefully what unites us is greater than what divides us. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Stella Coe, please go ahead. Stella?
Hi. Oh, sorry. I didn't know. I'm also speaking on behalf of the Invisible Acton Area Steering Committee. My name is Stella Coe. I'm on 11 Guthrie Road. Acton learned and grew as a community after 2 racial attacks were made on Ms. Evelyn Abaya Isa and Kira Wilson Cook, 2 members of our school committee. After initial stumbles, their voices were centered and heard. Our community conversations turned to focus on the reality of racism in our town. That progress, however, is being threatened by the recent revelation that the culprit may be an Arizona male youth. This single fact, in view of some, exculpates Acton, and voices have been heard demanding apologies or other statements to make things right or rectify a perceived rush to judgment. Isn't all of that beside the point? We at Indivisible Acton Area ask why there is so much effort devoted to the denial of racism than to fighting and eradicating it. The presence of racism in Acton does not rest on where the culprit lives. Numerous Acton residents of color have shared stories from their lived experiences of racism in Acton. President Biden condemned the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, and demonization that have long torn us apart. It simply cannot be true that Acton is the one exceptional town in the whole of the United States that is free from racism. Can we stop debating this single, simple, irrefutable fact from opposite corners and come together to make Acton even better? Our community includes many different lived experiences. Acton can be open, welcoming, and multicultural, and closed, harsh, and racist all at the same time. Our community is as varied and complicated as the lives of its residents. We can either move our beloved town forward into the future by courageously acknowledging its strengths and weaknesses, or we can circle back around to denying the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella.
Marty Benson, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening. My name is Martin Benson from 21 Deacon Hunt Drive. I wish to state that the views I express tonight are my own and only my own. Following the abhorrent Zoom bombing incident, a member of this board was quick to make the false accusation that the Zoom bomber was egged on by the Save the Colonials group. We now know the Zoom bomber had no connection to the AV community. Mr. Martin was quick to label the group as responsible and a racist organization. Mr. Martin fell victim to his own conscious bias towards those who hold different opinions. Several members of the school committee and school administration made similar false accusations. Classes at the junior high and high school were told that the Zoom bomber was a member of the Colonials group. To date, no one has issued retractions, corrections, or apologies. The retirement of the Colonial mascot was troubling for a number of reasons. 1, Acton should take pride in the historical contributions of our colonial forebears. It was home to our nation's first veterans, as well as fallen soldiers and their widows. Their bravery and sacrifice led to the founding of our nation. Residents from our tiny town were the catalyst for the spread of democracy around the Western world. Inspired by the town's colonial Minutemen, Acton's Davis Blues unit was involved in the first Union action of the Civil War. In the rush to cancel the mascot, many important historical considerations were overlooked, mischaracterized, or simply ignored. 2, the Colonial is more than a school mascot, it's the symbol of our town. Recent records requests reveal a coordinated effort by Superintendent Peter Light and School Committee Chair Tessa McKinley to limit student participation in public discussion throughout the retirement process. Only one group of students supporting the retirement of the Colonial was allowed to present. Likewise, no official school-wide survey was distributed. Many students were unaware of the retirement process until it was too late. Mr. Light and Ms. McKinley were so determined to retire the Colonial that they purposely violated their own naming policy and falsified its contents to the public. At the October 15, 2020 meeting, this policy was hidden from view, neither projected overhead nor included in the packet. Reading the policy out loud, Mr. Light purposely omitted key requirements which would have required far more consideration. Since the decision, the school committee has wasted significant taxpayer dollars on legal fees in an effort to suppress the release of public documents related to the process. It's troubling that Mr. Light and Ms. McKinley believe that they are above the rules. 3. The school committee's disregard for its own policy has led to heated rhetoric on all sides. Our group speaks on behalf of a large number of students, parents, teachers, alumni, and community members who are troubled but fear the consequences of speaking publicly. Many describe a troubling scene at AB in which the administration condoned and in some cases participated in the bullying, gaslighting, and malicious
One minute.
students and teachers who supported keeping the Colonial or simply wanted to discuss the issue. Many were scared to say anything for fear of saying the wrong thing. As a community, we need to do better. Since Mr. Martin brought this issue to your board's attention, we ask for your assistance in resolving this conflict. Mr. Light naively thinks the town will get behind this contentious decision, but that is doubtful. Our group will continue its efforts to challenge the school committee's decision and to petition the Colonial name to be reinstated. We are willing, however, to negotiate a compromise which we hope the selectmen will endorse and the school committee accept. We are asking the school committee to vacate their October 15th decision, take 6 months to a year for a cooling off period, then restart the process again following its own FF district facility naming policy. A year-long committee should be established composed of stakeholders with diverse backgrounds and viewpoints. This committee should be chaired by a neutral party who would be charged with selecting its members. A similar model is being used in Shrewsbury in consideration of its Colonial mascot. Group dialogue and adherence to
Your time is up.
One moment, please.
Your time is up.
One moment. Group dialogue and
Let him
time is up.
finish. Let him finish. Next speaker then.
Janet Adachi, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my comments. This is Janet Adachi, Simon Hapgood Lane. I'll try to be brief. I do have prepared remarks. This is a plea for a return to civil, productive adult discourse in particular, but not only between the town and the school district, who should be focusing their attention and energies on the pressing issues facing our community as a result of the pandemic, and also need to be working collaboratively and productively in developing the fiscal 22 budget. The spat in recent months about who is or isn't a good anti-racist is unseemly and must stop. I have been increasingly distressed by the tone and quality of the discussion and comments in this community about racism and bigotry. The nationwide movement sparked by shared horror at the inhumane treatment and death of George Floyd and others has degenerated lately in Acton and the school community into finger-pointing, self-righteous judgmentalism and unfair blanket condemnation of others, including town officials, whom I know and respect and who, contrary to the assertions of their critics, are very savvy. I'd like to emphasize a couple of points. First, any discussion of race and racism must include the entire community and be open to diverse opinions. What I've observed instead is proponents of anti-racism who are incongruously closed-minded and intolerant about any opinion not perfectly aligned with their own. I'm Asian American. My grandparents emigrated from Japan over a century ago, but I don't see any room for me or my unique perspective in the discussion. My guess is that I am not alone in feeling marginalized, unrepresented, and reluctant to speak up only to be disparaged as unwoke or even racist. This statement probably will generate negative blowback. Number two, in any serious discussion of race and racism, people need to keep things in reasonable perspective and context, starting with the words they use. Exaggeration can be attention-grabbing, but also inflammatory and off-putting and derail meaningful exchange rather than advance it. Two illustrations. First, no one, including town officials, denies that Acton has had some problems involving racist, bigoted acts. But that doesn't mean that Acton can be fairly described as a racist town, although that is what some vocal anti-racism proponents have insisted. People
1 minute.
who agree with such a sweeping mischaracterization, including me, are not racist, but merely reasonable and realistic. Second, no one denies that the racist language during the school committee meetings was offensive and deplorable, but one local activist group went so far as to equate the racist language with cross burnings. Being the target of racist taunting and disparagement is painful and never fails to shock. I know, I've been there, but cross burnings are an entirely different, horrifying form of wrongdoing from taunting. Words matter, and so does context. Simply banning racism and bigotry will not make it go away, but our community over time can become a more tolerant and supportive place where the sorts of racist and bigoted incidents that have occurred in past are rare or finally cease. I strongly recommend that one component be an ongoing, inclusive, multilateral exchange in which all of us in this community, whatever our race, color, religion, or creed, keep our minds open to learning and
Time's
understand
up.
life experiences and resulting perspectives of each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Who's up next?
1 second. Oops. Sorry, hold on. Amy Christopherson, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a member of the school committee. Amy Krishnamurthy on Davis Road. While it may be tempting to some to dismiss this as nothing to do with our towns or to think, see, there's no racism here, I would remind everyone of Evelyn's visceral reaction in the many stories we have heard from Black people in our two communities. We have a lot of work to do to face racism within ourselves and confront systemic racism in our two towns. We must continue to have these very difficult conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Charlie Cadillac, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. First, sorry to hear Joan's announcement of her announcement. Get to that later. Second, thank you, Janet Adachi. Somebody who is not part of any group that's not in favor right now has spelled out the difference between racist incidents in Acton and the whole town being labeled racist. It's not that difficult a distinction. I am going to focus on a comment as part of Superintendent Light's statement to the school committee meeting last Thursday, which I will read to get it exactly right. I have it in print in front of me. It is about the Visions Company and its role that's being contemplated or actually already used in Acton. Here is Dr. Superintendent Light's part of his statement. I am pleased to announce that we have been in discussions with Visions Inc., an organization with a long history of helping organizations, schools, and communities successfully navigate work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. The town managers have been working with Dawn Bentley and I in partnership to plan an initial meeting of town and community leaders with this organization with the goal of quickly expanding this work to have a deep community-wide impact that goes on. First, I try to find anything in DocuShare about the Board of Selectmen discussion or vote about having the town manager participate in something the schools are doing with Vision Sync. I have not found anything, so one of my questions is, has the Board of Selectmen discussed this Visions Inc. project, and if so, when, and what was the conclusion of the discussion? Second, what exactly is what Superintendent Light refers to as, quote, this work? What problem are we trying to solve by hiring this outside company? I looked at their website. It's pretty hard to tell what exactly they do. And I mean exactly. There's a lot of people listed on their staff with all the title of consultant, but it doesn't really explain what its process is. Next, I would like to know how much money has been already spent hiring this company, and what is the anticipated total cost of whatever it is we're trying to do. If somebody has an answer now, that would be helpful. Then I will repeat the last part of the section of Superintendent Light's statement, which says, make our schools more equitable and inclusive. In another part of his statement, he points out, and I will read it again.
1 minute.
For the first several hundred years of our existence, our communities were predominantly white and centered in the European experience, so our traditions and cultural norms naturally centered around these experiences. But we have changed rapidly, referring the we being Acton and Boxborough. But we have changed rapidly, and our incoming kindergarten class is now a majority non-white. Now think about that for a couple of seconds. If that's the case, Acton and Boxborough must be fairly welcoming to people of all backgrounds, skin color, and so on. So to repeat, what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve? I know there are a lot of people.
Time's up.
Okay, is there anyone else?
There's one more. Kara Wilson Cook, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Kara Wilson Cook, 20 High Street in Acton. I just want to make sure that as we get to the end of this conversation, we're really clear about what is really at focus, because we've heard a lot of things tonight. And I want to make sure that you hear my voice when I tell you I'm an elected person here in the town of Acton who, in the capacity of doing her job, was called racial slurs, was not centered in the conversation, had to fight to be heard. There is a context to this entire conversation. And I'm so grateful that it has been brought up in multiple ways, including, but not limited to, a caller just saying that the conversation will continue, that the public records requests, that the coming into school committee meetings to talk about the mascot will continue and continue and continue. I hope that citizens of this town hear it when it is said that those public records requests take time and care and money from people who work in this town, from volunteers and from people who work for our school district. We are using a considerable amount of time and resources to talk about a decision that has been made. The context started months ago, and it would seem that there are some who want to make it continue. I also want to make a really important point that though this was not a cross burning on my front lawn, I am still a citizen of this town and a public servant who is elected by you, who has been subjected to dehumanization by another person while in the capacity of serving you and your children. Do not dismiss these things. Do not belittle these things. It is time, all of us, to get back to work. It is budget season. It is a pandemic. It is a new administration. It is time to get back to work. So please, as we get back to civil discourse, as we get back to getting to work, center the voices of those who have been the actual victims of actual crimes, and no longer center the voices who have actually not been hurt by this. And please take the time to actually get us back to civil discourse, to stop the harassment, to stop the continued poking of both of these boards. We can do this. Let's get back to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira.
That's all, John.
Okay. John, it's 7:30. We had a hearing at 7:10. Is the counsel for Roach Brothers present now?
Check on that one. Did you want to take up something in the meantime?
All right, but let's just go back then to our regular agenda. We'll go to chair's update and manager's update and member minute, and then we'll go back to the Roach Brothers beer wine license application. So for chair's update, some of you are aware that at the ALG meeting on January 14, I made a personal statement directed to Peter Light. Last Thursday evening at the school committee meeting, Peter responded in a portion of his remarks to my statement. On Friday morning, Peter and I exchanged emails, and we had breakfast this morning. We spoke about an upcoming meeting, which I'm not sure has been confirmed yet, of elected community leaders and some other people that hopefully will lead to a broad community conversation on race and diversity along the lines that Janet Adachi, our former colleague, spoke about a few minutes ago, where voices would be heard, where people will be talking to each other and not at each other. There was an issue about having a facilitator. And Peter suggested a facilitator could be retained through the Visions organization. It seems to me that would be a worthwhile person to bring on our payroll on a limited basis. Now, I want to assure people my understanding of it is he would be a dialogue assister to aid in the conversation. This is not about the first step towards seed training for the entire town. I don't know any of the details about it, but I thought it was important that Peter and I, as two adults and as two leaders in the community, bury the axe from our exchanges and sit down and have a meeting, which we held this morning. It was very cordial and it was going in the right direction. We do need to have a conversation. We can put it on the agenda for our meeting next Monday night. Exactly what John Mangiarotti is aware of in terms of costs and who is going to pay for this endeavor. And that's a fair question on Charlie's part. Second, I've reached out to a well-regarded member of our community to see if this individual would assist in mediating if both the school side and the colonial side would be willing to talk about resolving their ongoing issue. It's become highly conflictual. It's taken up a lot of time. It's generated a lot of ill will, and it really needs to be put to rest. And I will speak further to the individual I had in mind, and be back to our board next week with a further discussion, on that topic. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 1. There will be an executive session at 6 o'clock. So with that, I'd turn it over to John for his manager's update.
Thank you. I have a few things, and I had a picture I wanted to show. I'll start with a few things. I'm excited to announce that through the hard work of Austin Siganowicz and the Commission on Disability, the town was awarded a grant from the state to purchase an adaptive bicycle. It's a $7,500 grant that we received, and we're going to purchase an adaptive bicycle that will be used on a bike trail by residents and those that asked to borrow it. It's really exciting. It's something that the Commission on Disability has been looking for a few years, and so it's exciting that we were awarded that grant this year. That will be ordered hopefully before the spring. An update on 67 Powder Mill. That's the project that is proposed next to 30 Sudbury. That's to come back to the board on February 22nd. We are working with the applicant to address the concerns that were raised. We've also instructed the applicant to work with the property owner, Chip Orchid's company, to determine how they're going to address the concerns related to access and safety related to our, people's use of 30 Sudbury and the proposed plans being put forward. So I expect information to be forthcoming in the next few weeks leading up to that. If there's any questions in the meantime, please let me know. I wanted to also mention that we've been working with our neighbors in Concord, the town of Concord, on a project to look at dispatch. Public safety communications is something that every town does, and most towns do it pretty similarly. And so we were looking with the town of Concord to see if there was any benefit to regionalizing that program. It's just a study. We're in the early phases, but I noticed that it was in the paper recently, so I wanted to just mention it to the board, just to let you know that it is something that we have been working on. I did brief you briefly, and now I'm briefing you publicly, just so we're all on the same page. And I'll come back with a full report on the study when it's completed, which it has not been as of yet. Also wanted to mention the EPA meeting next week about WR Grace. If all members of the board or a quorum is attending, please let me know and we can figure out how to post that if we have to. I also wanted to announce or show the public, let's see if I can do this here, share, that on Friday, we were awarded, the town of Acton. Is that showing up?
Yes.
So the town of Acton received the Kenneth E. Pickard Municipal Innovation Award from the Massachusetts Municipal Association. This is a great honor, and the town of Acton was honored for the work that we did to support small businesses through the pandemic. So I wanted to show this award, and I want to just thank the Board of Selectmen for its leadership and for the strong demonstration of support and the town voters for the strong demonstration of support for small businesses through all the work that we've done this year. And it's nice that the Mass Municipal Association recognized that work and honored us with this award. So next time the public is allowed back in the town hall, you will see this on the wall in the lobby out front. And just wanted to mention that and thank you for all your support with this.
Okay, member minutes, starting with Jim.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I got a couple things. One is the that meeting that let me put my screen so I can see people. The meeting that that John mentioned with the EPA, in case other people are curious about it. Is that backwards or is that, oh, that's forwards? Okay. So that's the way to find out about the meeting. This is a meeting that the APA is organizing with W.R. Grace doing a presentation about future uses of the W.R. Grace Superfund site down there in the south of Acton, where we lost 40% of our water supply overnight, a little bit over 40 years ago, and the cleanup's been ongoing since then. But now we're reaching a point where reuse can be considered. We had a brief conversation with W.R. Grace representatives about a solar farm there, but that's only 30 acres of the whole 180-acre site. So there's plenty more that could potentially be done there. And this is a great opportunity for people to show up, ask questions, get some basic information, and then ask questions about what are the possibilities on the site, and say things about what they'd like to see and not see there. That was the first one. Where's my notes here? I guess the only other thing I'd want to mention is just that I'm really looking forward to have you all meet Andrea Becerra, who will be introduced shortly, I hope, and our new sustainability director. And I'm looking forward to meeting with her later this week to talk about some work that the Green Advisory Board has been doing and that the Acton Climate Coalition has been doing to follow up on our climate emergency petition. And I'll be bringing some details about that back to this board at next week's meeting. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Joan.
Thank you. I am going to announce tonight my resignation from the board effective after town meeting in June. I want to thank the members of this board and all the other board members I've served with over the years. I can't believe the W.R. Grace situation is still going on. I was a selectman when that all started. I just want to say thank you to the town. Thank you to all the town employees over the years who have supported me. And I look forward to finishing this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. David.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the Acton Police Department for locating the person suspected of the hate crime against our school committee. I hope that person is called to account by the local police department in Arizona, and I hope that we find out more about his motivations. I don't want to speak for Kara and Evelyn, but I suspect that if they knew that they had the full backing of their community, the Zoom bombing attacks would not have been so disquieting. The name calling would have been easier to set aside. But these women didn't have the full backing of their community. In fact, their community had been attacking them for weeks before the Zoom bombing incident. Since then, a few community leaders and others have been trying to dismiss and distract from the actions which are designed to intimidate and discredit the school committee in general and its Black members in particular. Amazingly, some people continue to insist that there's no racism here. Before this first Zoom bombing, individuals in favor of keeping the old mascot sent in emails with overtly racist comments. Some were ashamed enough by what they were doing that they took steps to hide their identity. However, most used their names, and we know that they are members of our community or alumni. To counter those who keep insisting that there's no racism here, I'll read a smattering of these comments at the end of my remarks. Since the school committee's vote on the mascot, a group of pro-mascot folks continued to harass the school committee to try to get them to reverse their decision. Meeting after meeting, we hear multiple long statements accusing the school committee of policy violations, OML violations, not properly counting, conflicts of interest. None of these accusations have basis. They've even accused our educators of not understanding US history. These tactics are fundamentally dishonest and dishonorable, as evidenced by the fact that one person even offered to drop the accusations if he got his own way. The school committee's vote was unanimous. There's no chance of reversing it. The only outcome of this harassment is to discredit the school committee. The divisiveness created incites others to their cause and makes space for the overtly racist attacks on the Black members of our school committee. I have not and would not criticize anyone for their opinion. If someone advocated to keep the mascot, that is, of course, fine. I want to make it clear that I only denounce, 1, the racist feedback before the mascot vote, 2, the hassling and discrediting of the school committee after the vote, and 3, the tactics used to avoid responsibility since then. Oh, and I also denounced the Zoom bomber, but I need to be careful when I say that so that some don't use that as an excuse not to deal with the first three. A few community leaders continue to dismiss and distract from racism and harassment in our community. Obviously, they have not understood what we've heard about taking care of disenfranchised people when these incidents happen. I had previously avoided making some of these remarks before the police announcement because we seem to be making progress in understanding racism. Unfortunately, since the announcement, some people have reverted to form. Some think that my previous comments were unfair to the people harassing the school committee to reverse the mascot decision. Frankly, I don't see the logic that they're the victims in this situation. Multiple times since my remarks, certain individuals have told me what I meant by my remarks and then criticized me for what they said. To be clear, I never said that the Zoom bomber was one of the people wanting to keep the mascot. In fact, both publicly and privately, I said I thought that they were not the same people. At different times, I've used words like egged on, enabled, incited, and made room for to describe the effects of the harassment on others. I stand by those statements, and I'm happy to reread my comments of 18 December if there's any confusion. I've been asked to reconsider my position on this matter, being told that I would be publicly attacked if I didn't. I'm happy to listen to anyone's point of view, taking criticism as part of that. However, I'm not expecting too many people to attack me for defending the elected members of our school committee or calling out those trying to avoid responsibility for racist remarks. So that there will no longer be any doubt of the work we have in front of us, I'll read a few of the racist comments from the school committee feedback. I'll skip the senders' names, but anybody can look them up through emails or public records. Please try to imagine how you would feel if these comments were directed against you. The past is the past. Anyone living in it and offended by it needs to look at themselves and make changes in their own lives. Sell their homes and move to an inner city neighborhood and mentor young adults to value parents and education. If enough of them take on this endeavor, they can make real change. To sit in their upscale home in their upscale town built by white males and feel offended enough to make this their mission is only spreading anger and hate in our community. When whites become the minorities, the current mascot figure can be replaced. If someone doesn't like the mascot, then maybe they should have thought about it before they moved to Acton, Boxborough. The approximately 20% of non-white Acton residents have no right to dictate to the rest of us what our mascot should be. It is not the responsibility of Acton to change for the current people. It's the responsibility of those who came to live in Acton to live up to and honor those people that came before them. I do not feel that we need to rewrite history for a few of the squeaky wheels that need to change this entire country in order to make themselves feel relevant. They can go riot and pillage elsewhere. Don't change the name and cater to less than 2,000 people in this town of at least 25,000 people. They don't represent the masses, and the mascot isn't even offensive. We destroyed the effing natives, so we won. Ha ha, suck it. That's all for now. We're fortunate that the vast majority in our community are against these words and their associated actions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Dean?
Thank you. I'd like to make a few comments regarding the increasingly uncivil discussion about the colonial mascot. The Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee recently voted to abolish the colonial as the mascot for the schools. This is a self-inflicted wound that came in the midst of a pandemic, during a time of social unrest and suspicion, and apparently without compliance with established policy. Public discussion was discouraged and prematurely terminated. This arbitrary action will have repercussions for many years. Ultimately, the voters, taxpayers, and donors to the schools will have their say. In December and January, school committee meetings were Zoom bombed by an individual who used abhorrent racial slurs. And these attacks had a devastating impact upon two school committee members who were persons of color. These attacks also had a severe impact upon the community as a whole. This is not the kind of community we want to be. I have no doubt that there may be individuals in Acton who might hold racist leanings, but I think the response from the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, the faith community, and the general population showed how unacceptable racist acts are in our community. This fall, the Board of Selectmen established the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Commission to see just how much of a problem racist behavior is in Acton, listen to those impacted, and make recommendations as to how to stamp out racism in our community. Regardless of how we as individuals might perceive the problem of racism here, if any of our citizens feel threatened, discriminated against, or marginalized, it is an issue that the Board of Selectmen must take seriously, and I think we have. I look forward to seeing the DEIC report and acting upon it. The issue of the mascot and the issue of racism have been needlessly conflated. What is troubling to me is that the school committee and some other members of the community, including at least one member of the Board of Selectmen, rushed to judgment on the racist Zoom bombing incident and made both implicit and explicit comments stating without a shred of evidence that the Zoom bombing was initiated or encouraged by the citizens who were concerned about the cancel culture action by the school committee to abolish the colonial mascot. This weaponization of the Zoom bombing was a blatant attempt to shut down the discussion about the mascot issue that was being pursued by citizens and alumni who perceive this as the repudiation of our history and heritage. Those citizens have a right to be heard without being scapegoated, and they have a right to seek redress against arbitrary actions by branches of government. This demonization of a group of concerned citizens in an attempt to suppress dissent is as disturbing to me as the initial Zoom bombing. Indeed, to some extent, it is more disturbing, since we now know that the initial event was carried out by a bored and malicious teenager from Arizona with no connection to our community. And the attack upon the person supporting keeping the mascot is being carried out by elected and appointed officials of the town and school, all of whom are supposed to be responsible adults, who are supposed to be swayed by facts, who are supposed to show leadership, and who are supposed to be representing the entire community. It will take a long time for these wounds to heal. Important initiatives for both the town and the schools will be delayed or put into disarray or disrepute. I call upon those involved, be they selectmen, school committee members, or others, in the implicit and explicit attacks against the mascot supporters, to think for a few minutes about the damage and disunity you have sown. It is time to begin treating those we disagree with in a more respectful manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Okay. Mr. Fury, you're here?
He's muted.
Could you? Okay,
I am.
You're here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm sorry we're late getting to your hearing. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138, Section 15 of the General Laws that the Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, January 25, 2021 at 7:10 p.m. remotely by video conference and call in on the application of Roach Brothers for a Section 15 beer and wine license located at 387 Massachusetts Avenue, Acton, Massachusetts. Due to the continued closure of Town Hall to the public, the hearing will be held online via Zoom. From a computer, please click on the link to join the public hearing, actonma.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. After joining the meeting, computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Mr. Fury, would you please go forward?
Thank you very much. So my name is Alex Fury, and I represent RBSBW Inc., which does business as Roach Brothers, and they have a store located at 387 Mass Ave in Acton, as you know. I'm here in support of Roach Brothers' application for the available wine and beer license. Roach Brothers would like to sell wine and beer at their store in Acton, and the reason is to expand the shopper experience of its customers. It would like to offer its customers more convenience, greater selection, and be able to pair beer and wine selection and displays with various food offerings located throughout its store. Roach Brothers, as you know, has been in the Acton community for over 25 years. Roach Brothers deeply understands the duties and responsibilities that come with serving alcohol to a community such as Acton. Roach Brothers has it has 8 other stores in Massachusetts in which it sells beer and wine and alcohol. Over the years, Roach Brothers has developed some comprehensive guidelines that control its the sale of its beer and wine and alcohol in its stores. For example, cashiers must be at least 18 years of age to handle alcohol. They've developed a comprehensive point of sale electronic system in which anyone and everyone who's purchasing alcohol at a Roach Brothers has to show an ID. The ID is scanned in using a Massachusetts driver's license. If it's not a Massachusetts driver's license, if it's a passport, it has to be, the date of birth has to be manually entered into the point of sale system. The point of sale system does not would lock out any sales not during allowed business hours to sell alcohol. All of its cashiers are tips trained and certified. The point of sale system would lock out any minor cashiers from being able to sell alcohol. They wouldn't be able to allow to scan it in to make the sale. So Roach Brothers has put in these comprehensive safeguards into their systems and into their business. The store would be managed by a gentleman named Kevin Fry, who I know he's tuning in tonight and would likely raise his hand if you had any questions of him. He's been with Roach Brothers for over 30 years. He's managed stores for Roach Brothers that have sold alcohol. He's going to be personally on that site working in excess of 50 hours per week. Other folks you see may have logged on here. James Sperber, executive at Roach Brothers. Jason Corvier is also affiliated with Roach Brothers. So we are thankful for your consideration for our application. We believe that we'll continue to serve the Acton community.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fury. Are there comments or questions from board members, and then we'll take public comments? David.
Mr. Fury, I don't know if I missed it. Did you say how much of the store, what percentage or whatever is going to be devoted to selling beer and wine?
Well, we're actually going to be licensed for the entire store because under the ABCC rules, you need to, if you're going to have different displays in different locations, you have to have the entire store licensed. But it's going to be approximately 1,200 square feet will be the beer and wine area that the majority of the product is located.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry for being unaware of state regulations. Are there portions of time that you're open that you cannot sell alcohol?
Yeah, there are. There's going to be certain stated hours. 8 a.m. On weekend, 8 a.m. I think the 8 a.m. to 10 on weekends, and then on Sunday there's restrictions on Sunday as well, and we're going to follow restrictions outlined by the ABCC.
Thank you.
Comments from other board members? Joan.
Yeah, this isn't for Roach Brothers, but how many liquor licenses do we have? And if we award that, how many will be left?
John?
Thank you. I'm going to call a friend on this one. Lisa is our licensing agent for the board. Lisa, I know we have one. How many more do we have than this one that we're discussing tonight?
Hi, John. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So per the census, the last 2010 census, we are allotted 4 beer and wine package stores. So this will be our 4th. Depending upon the 2020 census, we may or may not have another one, but right now we currently have one.
Thank you.
Other questions questions or comments from board members? Are there any members of the public Jim?
Oh, just a short comment. I think this has worked really well at your fine competitor, Donnellan's, and I don't see why it wouldn't work well at Roach Brothers as well. Seems like a fine move.
Thank you. It's really worked well in the other communities that we have. We offer stores. It's really a great convenience for our customers to have a one-stop shopping situation.
Mhm.
Comments from the public, please.
Calling user, please go ahead.
Hi, it's Jennifer with Acton. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tara.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, I'm very encouraged by this, and I encourage you to have pairings set up because you got some nice cheeses there too, and some crackers that I like. So that's the first thing. I want to ask if Lisa could go over what she said. So I think I heard that if this gets awarded, that there will be one additional left that could be awarded. I want to make sure I heard that right.
Lisa?
Lisa, if you're trying to talk, you're muted.
You said this was the fourth license that we have, and it would, if approved, there wouldn't be any other available.
So this is it.
This would be it. I see. Okay. And then, did any of the other the package stores, did they object at all? Did they object to Donnellan's? I think it's a great idea. I just worry from an economic development standpoint, we're supposed to be protecting small businesses, and just some of these other places are on edge too. So wondering about that. And then I have one other statement after. No objections from any of the package stores?
Good.
I don't think this competes with package stores. John can correct me if I'm wrong, but it says this is a beer and wine license. So this doesn't compete with package store licenses.
And the last thing is that I object to people working 50 hours a week unless they really, really want to, and they're getting paid overtime. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the public?
Yes, one more hand up. Adrian Hancock, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Adrian.
Great, thank you. Unusual for me to attend. I have no affiliation with or interest in Roach Brothers, but I think this is a very good idea. It takes the sort of normal consumption of beer and wine and pairs it with food, and it also levels the playing field with Donnellan's and with Idlewild Farm. There is no reason why Roach Brothers should not be able to offer a complete package for a consumer to purchase if they so wish. It stops alcohol being quite so strange, and I agree with the other person who just mentioned this is not in competition with a package store. So I support this.
Thank you, Adrian. Are there any further comments from the public?
Nobody else has their hand up, John.
Okay. Are there any further comments from board members? Okay, so do I have a motion then to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. So David, if you call the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Gardner?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner, sorry. Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye, so that's unanimous.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed. John, would the procedure now just be a motion to grant a Section 15 beer and wine license to Roach Brothers? Is that how that works?
Yes, and if there are any conditions that you wanted to include, otherwise, yes.
Okay, I saw from the packet that the Chief Burrows had no concerns with the application, and from the planning department, Robert Hummel had no concerns. Okay.
Move to approve the license for beer and wine at Roach Brothers
Under Section 15.
under Section 15.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? So then David, call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Charter,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
and I also say aye, so that's unanimously approved.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fury.
All right, have a good evening.
Good. Thank you. This would be where for the COVID-19 response updates. John, please.
Thank you. Yes, we're moving along with the pandemic response. I'm pleased to report that our first responders and those eligible under the first part of phase 1 for vaccination were all vaccinated over the last few weeks, and we're now actively working with our partners at the state to do the next part of phase 1. And actually, the Baker administration announced today changes to phase 2, which the biggest changes including before it was just people 75 and older, and now they're including 65 and older in the phase 2. And the phase 2 is supposed to start in February. They say it's February 1st, and we are going to continue to work on planning for how we're going to help our community get vaccinated. Many medical facilities, people's primary care have already been reaching out, and there's many people with making arrangements already, and we're going to continue to work on filling any gaps that exist in coverage for vaccinations and continue to plan for the larger groupings that we'll be expecting later on in the process. So the Board of Health is meeting right now at the same time, and Cheryl Ball is going over with them some ideas we have for some outreach. The biggest one is we're going to send a letter out as soon as we can, maybe tomorrow, just to reach out to people and say, if you don't have a plan, please give us your information. And we want to know everyone that wants to be helped with this vaccine. We've certainly gotten a lot of contacts unsolicited, but we want to make sure we reach out to everyone. And we'll be working with the Council on Aging and others to make sure we cover everybody. In terms of cases right now,
John, a quick question: who would be the remaining people under the under phase 1 that?
So in phase 1, we have let's see here. So we had the clinical, non-clinical healthcare workers, long-term care facilities, first responders, congregate care settings, home-based healthcare workers, and healthcare workers doing non-COVID facing care.
And they will be vaccinated by the end of the month.
That's the yeah. I mean they're all set up. I think most first responders are all set, and the first few kind of bullets have been captured, and now it's getting the rest of them. And I think the release today by the state, which we published earlier, we published a COVID update today with the full press release from the state, just so people could read it for themselves, because there's a lot of detail in there. And so we're going to continue to work with the Board of Health and all of our other partners to make sure that our community has the latest information and is vaccinated as quickly as we can. So just in regards to cases, right now we have a total, to date, we've had 655 cases in Acton that we're aware of. We've had, right now, there are 49 people that are currently in isolation, which is, it peaked in the 60s a few weeks ago. And hopefully we're on our way down from a trend standpoint. So we're going to continue to manage it. Our departments are all, some of our departments have people that are in the next phase. Public Works is in phase 2, and many of our other people are in phase 2. So it's, I think it's a positive momentum, and hopefully it'll carry, and we'll be reporting good news. This is still obviously a very tragic outcome for a lot of people, a lot of families in town. But considering where we were 6 months ago, we're in a much better place. So we're going to hope that continues.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions? David?
John, do we know where the public vaccination sites will be that residents can go to when the time comes, either for phase 2 for those who qualify or phase 3 for those who don't?
Well, the state has announced and is encouraging people to go to the ones that they've set up. I think today they announced a site in Springfield. I think they've already announced Gillette Stadium and maybe Fenway Park, or no, but there's a mall in Springfield, a hotel in Danvers, and a few other places that they're going to try to encourage people to go. In terms of locally where we would do it, we're still working on that. I think I told you a few weeks ago, we partnered with Neshoba Board of Health to do our first responders, and that was actually at the Boxborough Regency as part of our collaboration with a bunch of towns in that area. And if we work with them going forward, it would probably be a similar setup, but we're exploring other options to see if we can get it done quicker. So stay tuned. I should have a report on that for Monday, our next meeting.
So, may I ask a follow-up? Yeah. Does that, am I to conclude from that we're kind of responsible, the town is, maybe surrounding towns, are responsible for setting up our own site? Because, Danvers, Fenway, Gillette, and Springfield are all pretty far away. I think there's also one in Worcester, but all those are an hour at least away from here. So that's all pretty far.
Yeah, I think hopefully more will be announced, and I think there's a lot of private healthcare industry types like CVS and Walgreens and places like that, I think, that are ramping up to try to provide a service to as many people as they can. But yes, the towns, and the state has encouraged towns to work together and not each 351 of us do it alone. And so that's why we worked with 8 of the towns for the first responders. And it went pretty well on all accounts. People that went there said it went smoothly, and we certainly would do that again. But we also want to be aware of the fact that as the phases increase, the number of people we need to vaccinate increases. So we may want to, we're pursuing a few other options to make sure we have something set up that's in the best interest for our community. But there are several ways that people can get vaccinated on their own, but we want to make sure to cover everybody.
Okay. No further questions. Okay, so we're up to item 5, discuss annual town meeting date and budget calendar. Again, John, please.
Thank you. So we've been working internally on our budget. As I mentioned, normally by now we would already had budget hearings and budget presentations, but all of that has been delayed with the idea that we're going to be having a town meeting later this year. Mark Hall has worked on a draft calendar and a timeline that I believe has been distributed with the idea that we would have a town meeting in late June, on June 21st as a proposed date, and then all the timelines leading up to town meeting, working backwards from that. With that being the case, if the board supports that, my budget, I will be presenting to the board the first week of March, and everything else would fall into place afterwards. Mark, is that something that you can share on the screen? Are you available to do that? And I'm getting the sense that we didn't send it out.
Yeah, 1 second, John.
Thank you. So I guess the biggest point of it is the end, and I think that's what the primary discussion is tonight with the board is: are you comfortable with the date that we've identified in June? I believe it's June 21st, with the idea being that school would be out by then. It's a Monday, and we can hold it outside or inside, outside, whatever works best based on where we are. All right, so here's the draft. Mark, let's go right to the end. Right, so all the planning is based on Monday, June 21st as being the annual town meeting date. So I guess that's the question: is if the board is comfortable with that, it would have to take formal action to call the date, because right now it's basically TBD. So the board would have to actually call the meeting date, and then we'd have to roll the timeline through, and all the things would have to fall into place from there. So Mr. Chair, would you want to talk about that as a first item, or do you want to go through the whole thing based on this date?
Well, let me, let's talk about getting the town meeting date established, then we can work backwards from there. We had talked about a possible Saturday meeting on the 19th and an all outdoor event. And I was under the impression that the cost of a hybrid meeting, an indoor and an outdoor like we had this past year, is about $41,000 compared to about $10,000 for a single site. Last year, we had the availability of CARES funds to meet the incremental difference, a large difference, which we don't have this year. So I was under the impression we were talking about an outdoor meeting, and it's a question of whether the outdoor meeting would be on a Saturday. Let's try that for the first time. Or do we want to do it in a traditional way on the 21st, start it on the 21st, if it goes over to the 22nd, or the 22nd is the rain date. When we discussed this at the ALG meeting on the 14th, the response was that, you know, people seem very inclined to say, let's try an outdoor meeting on Saturday the 19th. So have you had any new information that would cause you to just do it on the evening of the 21st? And whether it's indoor or outdoor?
That question is for me, I believe. I think the only thing I would clarify is that with regards to cost, the cost for a single site, as you referred to it, is really the typical way we would do a town meeting in the auditorium with everything that's already kind of there. The incremental cost comes in with having it outside. So I think it would be still pretty expensive to have an outside meeting compared to the least expensive thing to do is just go back to the auditorium and have it only inside. To do it outside.
We're not ready to do that yet.
Right. So to do it inside and outside adds an incremental cost. To do it outside only is still more expensive than the old way. Maybe not as expensive as doing both. So it's really just a matter of what's going to work best for the community, and our team will make it work for all of you, and we'll do it in the most cost-effective way that we can.
Okay, so to do a hybrid meeting like we did twice in 2020, we have the funds to do that.
We could make it work, I think. I mean, we have to really figure it out, but I'm sure we can make it work if that's the direction we want to take. Absolutely.
Well, what was when you talked about a June 21 Monday night meeting? Was that all in the gym, or was it all outdoors in the Fieldhouse parking lot, or was it a hybrid meeting?
You know, we're going to really continue to determine where we are as a community at that point. We don't anticipate that we'd be able to have it inside only. So I think the decision would be, do we do inside out or just outside? And I think that's a decision that we should make when we have to, and not quite yet.
We don't need to do that now. You're just looking for a date.
Yeah.
Okay. So for board members, do you want to talk about the traditional meeting on Monday the 21st, or a meeting try a Saturday meeting on the 19th, which we've talked generally about? I think Jim had been a proponent of a Saturday meeting.
Well, I was, but then as I was talking to various constituents about town meeting date possibilities in preparation for tonight, I was reminded that there are citizens of Acton for whom Saturday is a Sabbath day, and for whom it would be inappropriate for religious reasons for them to participate in a meeting. So it seems like setting a meeting on a Saturday is not a good direction in terms of being inclusive. So I although I was initially enthusiastic about it, I am less so than I was before.
Okay, that's fair. So would we then go to the 21st?
John, I would suggest we go to the 21st. I think that's a good date. Go with a Monday. Hopefully we can get it all done in one night. If not, we go for a second. And I agree with Jim on the inclusivity issue. I think that's important to keep in mind. So Monday the 21st would be what I would vote for.
Me too.
Okay, so Monday do we need to set a time, John, or just a date?
I think a date would be enough for now.
Okay. So do I have a motion then to set annual town meeting for Monday, June 21, with hour to be determined and indoor, outdoor to be determined as well.
So moved.
Okay. Is second? Any further discussion? Okay.
Yeah, just a comment that last year we deliberately moved a lot of possibly controversial items out of the town meeting to keep it one night, and I'm not sure we can keep doing that. So this year it may be more realistic to just keep in mind that this will be at least a 2-night meeting.
Okay, it depends what we've got. We caught up with some of those items at the September meeting. So I think we're all caught up. I mean, that was just the first time. I hope this may be the last. Okay, so David, then if you would just call the roll on the motion.
David has a comment, I think, first.
Oh, David, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I think we kind of backed into some of this town meeting improvement, right? We had a town meeting improvement committee. We made some improvements there, and then the pandemic forced us to make more improvements in terms of efficiency. And I think people like that. And if we can squeeze it into one night, that's great. If we can't, we can't. But I think we should keep up the things that we started, like putting a few more things into consent and recording videos ahead of time and things like that seem to improve the efficiency of town meeting.
All good. Any further comments?
Yeah, sorry, one more. I've also heard from people who don't understand why we can't do a virtual town meeting. And I've explained to them that the state, although allowing that for representative town meetings, doesn't allow that for open town meetings. And I think there's some fine technical reasons why it would be a lot more tricky for us to do that. But in compensation for that, I wonder if we can plan for, if there are items on the warrant that we find are, tricky, if we can make sure to think about sponsoring, open meetings for people to, learn and comment and actually discuss these items. We sometimes do that. I just want to make sure that we especially do that this year if we're going to be toning down the opportunity for comment and discussion at the town meeting. Let's have it beforehand.
Okay. Well, the major articles all had video presentations that were available ahead of the meeting, and I think quite a few of them were well watched.
Yeah, that was a great start.
Okay. So if there's so we have a motion and a second to the motion for the 21st. So David, if you call the roll, please.
Sure. Mr. Snyder-Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye. So it's the 21st.
Okay. Well done. Was there anything further, John, on the budget calendar?
No, not just I want to just call attention to the budget presentation. Mark, would you mind scrolling up to that? I want to just get the exact date. Oh, it is March 1st. March 1st is when I will be presenting a budget to you, and I will include in that this year the 10-year capital plan that we've been working on. So I look forward to that night. That's all. And we're gonna plan for a workshop with the Selectmen joint and the school committee, looking like a Tuesday in April, April 13th. If you want to just jot that date down as a placeholder. And those are the kind of the key things. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, John, if you would, this is a good piece of the meeting. If you would introduce our new sustainability director.
Yes, thank you. Mark or someone, can someone please promote Andrea as a panelist as I get started here? So tonight I'm very pleased to introduce our new sustainability director. This is a position that we're very excited about. And we had, as a community, we had a very deliberate and thoughtful process to select our candidate, including assessment, screening, and international recruitment. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Andrea Becerra. as Acton's first sustainability director. Andrea is joining us after working for the Natural Resources Defense Council for the last 5 years. She received undergraduate degree from Davidson College and graduated with the master's from the Fletcher School at Tufts, where she studied integrated water resource management and environmental and resource policy. As part of her graduate degree, she was very interested in water systems science and society. At National Resource Defense Council, she worked on communication strategies to build support for U.S. Clean Power Plan and to advocating for smart policies across the Americas. Gained appreciation for local environmental work while cooperating with regional governments in Mexico City, Santiago, Chile, and in the development of water resilience plans. During her work, she also collaborated with scientists, policymakers, urban planners, farmers, business people to promote socioeconomic development and environmental health. Her prior work includes serving as a fellow at the Stockholm Environmental Institute, attending the UN Climate Conference in Bonn, Germany, and while the U.S. had announced its withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, took efforts to curb greenhouse gas emissions at the local level through local government's sustainability initiatives and the Global Covenant of Mayors of Climate and Energy. So, Andrea, thank you for joining us tonight. And this is the Board of Selectmen, the elected officials here in town. And Andrea, please share your story.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's really great to be here, meet you all virtually. I look forward to the day when we can all meet in person without any worries. I'm going to share my screen, and I prepared a little presentation for all of you. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Good evening. I'm the new sustainability director for the town of Acton, and actually the first sustainability director for the town. I've read nearly everything I could find on Acton and sustainability. This includes an article from the Patch in 2011 about the Phantom Slayers, the name of the team of Acton junior high school students who placed third in a national change maker competition for reducing energy wasted when an electronic device is off but still plugged into the outlet and consuming power. This is, of course, one example of many sustainability actions that have taken place to date. There's the Environmental Sustainability Policy passed in December 10th, 2018, the Greenhouse Gas Inventory conducted in 2019, and of course, the September 8th town meeting declaring a climate emergency. A lot of the groundwork has already been done. So my goal for the first 3 months is to go on what I'm calling a listening tour, to continue learning about the culture of sustainability in the town of Acton, learn about the tools and resources that are available, including state grants like the MVP Action Grant or the Mass EVIP Fleet's Open Grant programs to make EV and EV charging stations more widely available across Massachusetts. I plan to reach out and speak to town staff, the Board of Selectmen, committees, Acton Green groups, including the coalition of over 35 members of the Acton Climate Coalition, sustainability directors and officers in Massachusetts, New England, and across the country through the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and ECLAY, a global network of more than 1,750 local and regional governments committed to sustainable development. The goal is to learn about their experience, hear their wisdom, and learn about the tools at our disposal. I've already met the Green Advisory Board. I've reached out to Kate Crosby, the energy manager at Acton Boxborough Regional School Districts, and many others. I've also met sustainability directors Kate Hanley in Concord and Stella Carr in Lexington, our neighbors down the road. And of course, this isn't an exhaustive list. There are lots of groups and individuals who I think are eager to be a part of the Acton climate action work. In fact, a broad, inclusive engagement will be critical for understanding the opportunities and limitations within the wider community. I will be asking hard questions to learn about the barriers we need to overcome, including the financial and legislative hurdles and the opportunities for reaching a net town-wide carbon emissions to zero as quickly as possible and in an equitable manner. I will be reading every climate plan I can get my hands on. I will be validating solutions with my town colleagues, with the Board of Selectmen, with internal and external experts, and I will be looking to the Acton community. As John mentioned, I'm starting this position after more than 8 years of working in sustainable development. This includes 5 years with the environmental nonprofit organization, the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC. While at NRDC, I worked on a variety of issues, including advocacy at the national and regional level to promote clean water and air through communications campaigns such as building momentum in support of congressional climate action, including the U.S. Clean Power Plan. More recently, I led the water program for the Latin America Project, which included establishing partnerships with local organizations across Latin America, tackling water management challenges from a variety of sectors and perspectives. As part of this effort, I work closely with resilience initiatives and regional governments in Mexico City and Santiago, Chile, in the development of their water resilience plan. As John mentioned, I received a master's in environment and resource policy and integrated water management at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts. I look forward to working with all of you as we move from concept to action and effectively kickstart a better future starting now by tackling the emissions in our buildings, in our energy, our mobility, and nature. Acton has already made great strides in all 4 of these areas. It's an honor to be a part of this community and join an incredible effort to build towards resilience and carbon neutrality together. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you very much and welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Now, when you work with the National Resource Defense Council, were you working in Chile?
I actually worked from their DC office for numerous years, and then I worked remotely while I was living in Massachusetts. And then I've been working for them from Chile for 1 year, but mostly in pandemic mode. So I might as well be anywhere because I've been sequestered in my apartment like many people are right now.
Okay. We hope to see you in person soon. Any questions?
I'm Massachusetts.
Any questions for Andrea? Okay. Well,
just a big welcome and looking forward to working with you. And I think it's a wonderful bonus that you have, in addition to your climate skills, you have water skills, because as you've noted, there are important water quality and quantity issues in Acton as well. So I'm looking forward to helping with you diving into both the water issues and the climate issues and all the other sustainability issues. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I know we have a meeting scheduled or trying to schedule for Thursday, so very excited to set on a time and finally meet in a more official capacity.
Thank you. Anyone else? Andrea, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
So we up to item 7, approve, revised, and updated option agreement with the Acton Housing Authority for development of senior housing at 348 352 Main Street. Is Jillian with us tonight, John?
She is not. But the changes that were discussed at the previous meeting have all been made, and the document is ready for your approval if you're interested in approving it.
Okay, so the key change from last time was in Exhibit A, with respect to if the dog park has to be reconstructed, that may be satisfied by the housing authorities, may satisfy through either they can reconstruct the dog park or pay the town the sum of $25,000. Is that the key piece?
On page 2.
Yes. Exhibit A.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So are there any other questions that board members would have? So we're all set with that one change. Then is there a motion then to approve the grant of option agreement to the Acton Housing Authority for the senior housing project?
So moved.
Thank you, Joan. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Dave, just call the roll, please.
Yep, Mr. Snyder Grant,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Charter,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
and I also say aye. So that's unanimous.
Okay, so we next had to discuss the board's priorities for CPA funding applications. So, Dean, do you want to lead this conversation?
Sure. So the board had a brief discussion about this issue several meetings ago, and I got some guidance from you folks, which I submitted to the CPC. Basically, the sort of priorities that right off the top of my head, I felt there's a high priority for the dog park funding, and a sense that for new projects, it's better off to complete any existing projects than take on any new projects. So I brought that information back to the CPC, and they're specifically concerned with this a plethora of requests from the recreation department. And they wanted some guidance on that. Now, I'm not expecting that this board is going to, go into this in exhaustive detail. That's really should be due diligence on the part of the CPC, but I think they would like some guidance. What's driving this, frankly, is that there's about $2.9 million worth of requests and about $1.9 million to allocate. So there are certainly some town projects and town initiatives that we as the Board of Selectmen don't really need to prioritize. For instance, there's a couple of historic projects that are under consideration. There's housing projects under consideration. There's open space. Recreation also gets everybody's attention because there is no statutory requirement for an allocation amount towards recreation. So when you start looking at how we're going to make up the gap between 1.9 and 2.9 million, recreation kind of sits right out there. So I would direct the board to and it went out in the packet, a memo that was sent by Melissa Rear, the recreation director, on December 11th, prioritizing from the recreation department's point of view which project should go ahead of the others. And their prioritization basically was the sports pavilion at Narrow, which certainly hits a number of items. It's an ongoing initiative and it would finish that project. Number 2 would be renovation of the Elm Street tennis courts, also an existing project. Number 3 is Gardner Field and Playground project, which is frankly a sort of a new initiative that was brought on as a result of neighborhood interest and a lot of interest from West Acton Village. And then lastly, the expansion of the playground surfaces at Jones Field. So frankly, I'm comfortable to just take this memo and vote it as a board and submit that to the CPC. But if the board wishes to have any further discussion, I'll be happy to take down that information and we can proceed as you guys feel fit.
Joan.
Yeah, are the Elm Street tennis courts involved in the school construction?
Well, it's a rather complicated issue. Originally, they were not part of the school construction project, but I think the town manager might have some information on that.
Yes, certainly. For the February 1st meeting, which is a week from tonight, I've been working with Selby and Town Council to bring forward to a board a proposal from the school district to utilize Elm Street for the construction project, the twin school construction. Because of COVID and because of the inability to carpool currently, there's a lot more cars on site than there would be normally, and trucks. And so there's limited parking available. So they're proposing to use a portion of that site for parking. And what we're discussing is if using the Elm Street courts is a potential, and what potential that would lead for us to have some work done on that in exchange. So that, but that's all still being sorted out, but that's sort of the general idea of what we're working on.
So we could take that off this list for this year.
Well, certainly if that idea comes to fruition, and we probably would know that within the next week or two, we could, but if not, I think it'd still be a priority from the rec perspective.
Jim?
Yeah, a couple of questions before I made a comment about the order. For Dean, I guess. So in the recreation memo, they mentioned that the rec department would like to turn back some funds that were reserved for other projects that they don't need. And they described this as reducing the cost of the sports pavilion from around $250,000 down to $8,000. And I mean, I had just a year on the CPC, but that didn't quite sound right to me. It sounded like instead it would potentially increase the amount of money that was available for spending, and then that extra money that was available for spending within the Preservation Committee's funds could be used for the sports pavilion. But I was wondering how that works.
Right. Well, what's happened is that they're turning back some money from projects that for whatever reason they figure are not going to be able to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that money coming back has already been accounted for in that $1.9 million. So the fact that it was allocated to them at one time, but then they didn't use it does not, they might like to think that it implies that they have an earmark on those funds. But from the point of view of CPC, it goes back into the piggy bank and we figure out where it goes from there.
Okay, great. That matches my understanding. And it also helps me understand that I think I used to read that the amount of money available was about 1.7 million. So now I understand that the 1.9 is a larger number because there have been these turnbacks.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah. The other question I had was about the Jones Playground project. So the last step that they're trying to complete with this $120,000 is really important for disabled population or people that have issues with walking and need level surfaces, including those people in wheelchairs. And I'm wondering if that's possibly mandatory for the town to have that level of compliance anyway. So either, which suggests to me either that this is not a CPA a CPA use of money, but a use of town money because it's a mandatory for a town facility. But I don't know the law deeply enough to understand that. But I was wondering about, you know a lot more about this than I do. So I was wondering what your perception of that was.
My understanding from the discussion was that that they can actually they have universal accessibility from the parking area to the playground area itself right now, or they can make that happen using more conventional paving materials. I think David Martin, I believe, is the BOS liaison to the Recreation Commission, so he might have some more information. But certainly, I share your concern about making sure that these facilities are universally accessible. So I defer that to Dave.
Dave?
So there's not a requirement that every piece of playground equipment be accessible, but that's the goal at this park. The increase in surfacing increases the level of accessibility here, right? And so it's not a yes or no. It's level 1 or level 2. Already there's this accessible, by accessible, you can roll a wheelchair on it, surface around most of the pieces of equipment. They want to do it to a few more places to make it easier both to get there and to roll around once you're there. So it's not building a sidewalk, which is, is debatable legally with CPA money.
Okay, thanks. So given that, I think that my priorities are different than the ones in the recreation memo. For me, both the Gardner Field and the Jones Playground represent top-tier projects for different reasons. The Gardner Field helps the West Acton businesses, and we've just talked about the importance of supporting our local businesses because it provides an additional, attractive place for customers to come to and, maybe eat their ice cream or read their book that they just bought. So I think there's a lot of people that come and go and live in West Acton Village, and it really it helps make that area continue its success. And with the businesses struggling, I think it's a nice addition. Similarly, with the Jones Playground, I think that increasing the ADA compliance is part of the fundamental vision of the Jones Playground, and it would be great to make that happen at the same time as as soon as possible after the playground itself, the rest of the facilities are finished. So doing that soon, I think, rather than putting it off and doing it later, seems like the right thing to do. In terms of the lower priorities for me, the number of people who play tennis on the Elm Street courts is not zero, but it's not huge. I mean, I think about the population that are potentially helped by these things. I don't think of the tennis users at the Elm Street court as large an audience at all as the people that will be helped by Gardner Field and Jones Playground. So I would put that lower. And also, even with the narrow sports pavilion, I think that the key thing that was already done there was the accessible bathrooms for the Miracle League. So those are complete. We had a grand opening. They're lovely, and I'm glad that they're there. The second building, the south building, which would be completed by this part, is to help the recreation department have a central place to be that's closer to their a lot of their activities, and it helps with the summer camp program, which is again not nobody, but it's not as huge a number of people as the other facilities. So for me, I would put the Gardner Field and Jones Playground in the top tier, and the Elm Street Court and the Narrow Sports Pavilion in a lower tier, which is almost the opposite of how the recreation department had ranked things.
Thank you.
David. Yes. So maybe I disagree with Jim here. So I'm very much, as I mentioned last time, I'm very much in favor of completing works in progress before we start new things, right? Having several things that are 60% done or something doesn't make any sense to me. And then to have all these things that are in progress and they've taken money and then we haven't taken them over the line is important. And I think the sports pavilion is important. NARA is by far our biggest facility, and to be able to have the recreation department's presence there in the summertime is huge. So I do think the sports pavilion is good at number one. I would completely skip the resurfacing of the Elm Street courts at this time. Maybe we'll know in a week or two, but I think that the arrangement with the school building project is something that everybody wants to do. They would resurface the courts for, as part of, I was going to say for free, but as part of the arrangement with you being able to use that area for parking during the project. The parking is a huge problem for them because they can't, in a normal construction project like this, they would rent a parking lot somewhere else and bus people in, but they can't really do that in COVID. They can't, put 20 construction workers in a van and bring them in from Nagog Park, or I don't know, some other remote facility. So so I think we're going to get that. We give up the use of the tennis courts for a while, and we get that resurfacing as part of the deal. So I would skip the Elm Street thing, and so I would put the sports pavilion first, and then the Jones playground and the Gardner field thing is roughly equivalent. I think that it's important to get a start on the Gardner field project. That needs a little bit more. I've looked into this a bit recently. It needs a little bit of thought about some of the land use, some of the drainage, some the details of the final design. But I think it is possible to get started here. I think it's premature to ask for the full amount, and I think that they're not asking for the full amount anymore. So, but I would like it to be funded in a way that doesn't inhibit the final, once the design moves forward, that there's not some kind of restriction on how that money can be allocated to the first phase. In other words, the contents of the first phase can shift a little bit depending on the design work that happens. So, I guess I would do, like I said, the sports pavilion first, and the other two are relatively equivalent, and skip Elm Street.
Further comment, Dean?
Well, okay. We seem to be at an impasse here as far as providing guidance. So I don't want to get too involved. My own personal feeling is that the sports pavilion is probably the highest priority, just so we get everything done at NARA and we're done with it, because we just seem to keep coming back to that area again and again. But I don't want to get too many separate bites of the apple, because I'll be able to speak at CPC as a member as well. So, if somebody would like to propose a motion, I can portray that, or I can just bring these separate bits of information back to CPC tomorrow night. It's
and John Benson, we also have about a bunch of hands up for public comment if you want to take public
Sure,
comment.
let's take that. Yes.
Paul Swiden, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you for having me. I just wanted to be here. The town manager asked me to be here in case there were any questions about the Gardner Field project. To the question that David raised about the drainage, I went back this weekend and I spoke with our landscape architect, and what she told me is that we would design a rain garden detention basin to run along the entire south end of the proposed parking lot, and that would take care of a lot of the runoff, and that the rubber surfacing is permeable on a gravel base, so that there wouldn't be any runoff issues with the playground surfacing. It would just be the parking area, which they feel they can solve with the rain garden detention basin. I don't know too much about what that means personally, but that was, David had raised that question when we had spoken, and so I wanted to investigate that. And as to his other point, we have broken up our request to CPC, and we've also over the past week we've talked more as a board and committed to doing further fundraising on our own as well, so that we're not just simply reliant on CPC funds. Thank you.
Paul, John Benson with a question. What is your request? $704,000 for this year, for this cycle?
It was. It no longer is. What we're going to put forward in our presentation tomorrow to CPC is for 350,000 this year and for 280,000 next year. The total cost for each phase will be 420,000 this year and 320,000 next year. But we're going to try to make up the balance between those two numbers with our own fundraising, including money we've already raised.
Okay. And that would do it.
Yes, that would complete the three phases. It would bring the total project cost to around 775,000, and approximately 15% of that we're committed to raising on our own.
Okay, that's very good. Okay, so you're on your way.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so would there be a motion then?
John, there's more people.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's more. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Kara Lafferty, you can go ahead.
Kara,
hi there. Hi there. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Kara Lafferty, Neshoba Road. And I just wanted to kind of very briefly lend a few points that Paul didn't go over with just the numbers, but just to kind of give this some personality to the request and our hopes that this board reconsiders their offered ranking for the different projects. This group, the Friends of Gardner Field, has been around for about 2 years now. So it has been a group of people that have been exceptionally involved and dedicated to this project and feel very passionately about it. In fact, I think there's probably 7 or 8 board members on this Zoom right now, and there'll probably be about 20 to 30 members that come tomorrow to the CPC meeting. So there's an enormous amount of town support, and I would offer if there are other projects that can access other sources of funds, particularly it sounds like this Elm Street would go more towards the next 12 months of serving as a parking area as opposed to a recreational source, then I would suggest that maybe we could use these funds for something that could be used as recreation, within the next 12 months in town. I think everyone is sick of being stuck in their houses, and this would allow recreational opportunities for children of all abilities, being a universally designed park. And also my hope is that it'll be a meeting place across the age spectrum, where folks from Windsor Green can come, where folks that pick up a cup of coffee can come, where young people can talk with older people. I think Acton's missing that, and I think that this would be a perfect place for that type of commingling. And also, it goes without being said for the folks on this Zoom that this park was slated to be completed with the Acton 2020 plan. It hasn't been completed. Historically, it's always been on the same revamp schedule as Jones Field. And there's some dilapidated equipment there. It's not in the best shape, and I just think that we owe the beautiful village of West Acton a little TLC for this park. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kara.
Tara, please go ahead.
Hi, it's Tara. I use the Elm Street tennis court, and it's fine. It's cracked, so what? Life is. I'm fine waiting for the Elm Street courts to get refinished, and would rather that we spend the money on places more people go to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, David?
2 more.
Sure.
Shelley Moore, please go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to add in a little bit. I think that Paul and Kara have spoken, very clearly and fluently about our project, but I just wanted to add a little bit of color in that I live in West Acton and I join the effort for the playground just because I think there's a huge opportunity to make it a better place for all the community to use. And it's not just for kids or playground, but we're also looking at it to be a really great spot for all members, all ages, all demographics of the community to be able to use. Like right now, it is a hugely undervalued asset in our community, and there's so much that we could do. A little bit different than tennis courts, honestly, a little bit different than even Jones Field that doesn't have the same kind of draw and accessibility for everyone. So I just wanted to, it's different. It's a huge asset that if we did kind of prioritize, we would have a much better option to just deliver value to so many people on so many different levels.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Alyssa Nickel, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Alyssa Nickel from School Street. I'm an associate member on the CP. So I just want to say thank you to the board for revisiting this discussion and exploring prioritizing the recreation projects. What would be super helpful for me would be to include the dog park in that list, or at least comment on it. I know Joan had expressed support for that project at your last meeting where you discussed this, but although it is a Town of Acton recreation project application, it was not in the recreation department list because it's been being put forth by a different group. So if anybody would like to talk about that, that would be really helpful for the committee, I think. Thanks.
Okay, so that's it on Joan.
Yeah, I would like to rank the proposals. 1, the dog park. 2, the sports pavilion. 3, Gardner Field. And then Jones.
Okay.
I'll second that. And if Joan would accept a friendly amendment, I would also mention Elm Street, just that not be considered at this point.
Yes.
Okay. So, and Joan, you've accepted the friendly amendment.
Yes.
So it would be 1 dog park, 2 sports pavilion, 3 Gardner Field, 4 Jones Playground surface, and with the Elm Street court renovation not being considered at this time.
Right.
Okay. So is there any further discussion? Jim?
I know that my initial list was different, but what I'm hearing from people is the importance of the pavilion. So for the purpose of giving the CPC some clear guidance, I'm happy to go along with this rank ordering. And I know that the CPC will dive into the details and we'll work out, maybe some of these can be shrunk a little bit or whatever. They'll figure it out. But if they want some guidance from us, I think this is fine guidance.
Okay. So David, if you just call the roll then.
We need a second.
I think Dean seconded.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, I'll call the roll then. Mr. Snyder-Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye.
Okay, so you have your ranking name.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the help.
All right. So we're up to item 9, which is approved intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough, Littleton, Maynard, and Westford for distribution of CDBG CV funding for micro enterprise grants and funding for public service providers. John, please.
Thank you. I will give just a brief overview of what this project is and then what the agreement I'm asking you to consider tonight. So as you know, the board, the town was awarded $1.6 million from the state, which is basically federal CARES funds that were given to the state to administer through their CDBG program. And we had a competitive application with Boxborough, Littleton, Maynard, and Westford, and we brought in that money for our region. What we're going to do with that money is we're going to give out 100 micro enterprise loans to businesses in the 5 communities. And we're also going to help with families that need subsidies for daycare. We have about 50 subsidies across the 5 towns that we're going to distribute through this program. And we're also going to distribute funding to food pantries in each of the 5 communities. So it's a very exciting program that's going to help a wide range of people. And since Acton is the lead community on the funding, council advised that we have an intermunicipal agreement with our other 4 partners just to make sure that when we start spending money and giving out money on behalf of other communities that we have an agreement in place. So the other 4 towns have already reviewed and approved and signed this agreement. I believe we have 1 town signatures missing, but they've all approved it. So the agreement that is before you tonight is just to codify our contractual arrangement with our partners and also to give a plug for the program, which we launched on Friday. And we've already had more than a dozen applications come in. So it's a very exciting program. And we started out with the micro enterprises, which is what we're doing right now. In the next week or so, we will be making announcements on the other programs, which are still being developed.
And with the micro enterprise, are those loans or grants?
So they're called loans because we want to make sure that they're used appropriately before we give up on them. But as soon as because we're held accountable to the federal auditors, but as soon as the business gives us receipts showing that they use it for what they're supposed to do, they're granted the money. So it's called a forgivable loan.
Okay.
I'm going to try to get one of those for my next car.
You have a very nice car. So are there any questions, comments from board members? Would there be any audience citizen comments or questions?
No, nobody has their hand up.
Okay, so if there's anything, Joe?
No, move to approve the agreement.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay.
A quick question.
Sure.
Do we have to sign this in person?
We can figure that out. You don't have to. So you certainly don't have to, but if you want to take a trip to town hall, you can.
You have our signatures, don't you?
Yeah, Lisa can do some magic as long as you formally approve it and all 5 of you are on board.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we have a second? If not, I second.
Okay. So no further discussion. David, call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder-Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye. So that's unanimous.
Okay. So number 10, item 10 is discuss the 2021 Acton Boxborough Farmers Market Elm Street location. John, please.
Yes, so this is the site we were just talking about a few minutes ago, but it's not the exact same site. Basically, the farmers market, because of COVID, changed locations, or for several reasons. We changed locations last year, and it worked out pretty well, and they want to do it again. And the location was using the area around the tennis courts at the Elm Street area on Sundays. And so they're asking to do that again this year. And I asked all staff involved in all departments, and there was no issues with it last year, and there's no issues going forward. The only issue, of course, is the twin school construction, which we are working with the project managers over there just to make sure that they understand that if the board approves this, that they would have to make sure they're not in the farmers market's way on Sundays. And the site isn't active on Sunday, so we don't see it to be a huge risk, but it's certainly something that we're gonna have to stay on top of.
Jim.
Just to connect a couple of other agenda items. I want to make sure people knew that the Gardner field plan is designed in such a way that it has enough paved space that it can eventually serve as a more permanent and cozy home for the farmers market. So they won't be, stuck out on the edges of the tennis court in the middle of a construction zone forever.
David?
I just want to say to Jim there, I don't have any problem with that in Gardner Field, but there are comments on that. I think I know this is not the subject of this thing, but a project that's approaching $750,000 needs some public hearings and comments before we start building, which is why I wanted some flexibility in how we use phase one, because the details of phase one could change as the final design comes in and townspeople make comments on it. So, I mean, there have been comments that people don't want parking there, and there have been comments that people think it's essential to have parking there. We need to sort those through. And certainly a lot of people would love to have the farmer's market there. So, but I think it's maybe premature that that's a done deal. But I think that the farmers market worked out very well here last year. It was enough room to spread out with COVID. Hopefully, there's a little less COVID this year, but after more people get vaccinated, but we have to, leave the room there. I went to most of farmers market Sundays at work, and I don't think that there would be a conflict on Sundays since school is not open on Sunday. If they did, get behind in schedule and the construction crews needed to work on Sunday, I think they could park at the Gates School. The construction workers could park at the Gates School. So, because there's no staff, faculty and staff there. I think it's a good thing.
Joan?
Yeah, move to approve the farmer's market on Elm Street on Sundays.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, David. Any further discussion? Okay, so David, if you'd call the roll.
Yep. Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye.
Okay. We have one last agenda item, the update on the former Kmart parcel. I noticed there's about 50 people in the audience, so if we could just jump and do the consent items, so that's done. So item 12, approved meeting minutes January 4 and January 11, 2021. 13, approved executive session minutes December 21, 2020. 14, committee appointment Louisa Callahan, associate member, Dog Park committee, term to expire June 30, 2021. Committee appointment Ann Corcoran, full member, Recreation Commission, term to expire June 30, 2024. I'd like to just hold that one to correct the spelling error. 16, accept gift Natural Resources for $40 from Leslie Bernard and Delsuke Matsukura to support conservation land trail maintenance. 17, accept gift Council on Aging for $50 towards the Council of Aging gift fund in honor of the Shatta family. Item 18, approve revised charge for Economic Development Committee.
Let's hold that one.
You want to hold that one?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Move to approve items 12, 13, 14, 16, and it's in 16. So 12, 13, 14, and 16.
Second.
And 17.
Oh, sorry, and 17. You're right.
Okay. So, and there's a second.
Second.
Okay. Then David, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye.
So on 15, there's just a misspelling on Ann Corcoran's last name. It's Corcoran. So do we want to
approve?
Okay, so is there a second to approve consent item 15?
With spelling correction.
Yes. Okay. So if David would call the roll on that, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I also say aye.
Okay, Jim, you had a question on 18, approve the revised charge for the Economic Development Committee. I included a handout in the packet explaining the background and the reason for the change.
Yeah, I thought the purpose of the change is very reasonable, to change the involvement of a Board of Selectmen member from an actual member of the committee to being a liaison in order to make room for additional members. So I've got no problem with that. I think partly it was that I think a committee charge is a big deal and deserves, to be looked at by the select board. And also I got a specific request from a constituent about how to prioritize we have a lot of vacant storefronts and we have a lot of unused commercial properties, and I think the language includes that, but I wonder if it would be strengthened to add a bullet point, something around identify vacant storefronts and commercial properties and publicize the list to help assist businesses that would like to open up in Acton.
Yeah, well, under their existing charge, they have they've divided the town up among the members, and they're putting together a list of vacant storefronts, and I think that would come under bullet 1: help attract, retain, and grow businesses.
Great. If that's already in play, and do we know that list will be that'll be available for businesses to look at?
I will pass that on to the committee chair.
Okay, that'd be great.
As a new liaison.
Great. Yeah, I have some information about state programs to assist in that I'll pass on to you to pass on to the committee.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the revised charge for the Economic Development Committee? That's item 18.
So move.
Okay, and Jim second. Joan moves, Jim seconds.
Yep.
If there's no further discussion, if David would call the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Snyder-Grant,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Charter,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
and I also say aye. So that's unanimous.
Okay. So the last item, and I imagine that's what 49 participants are here for, is an update on the Kmart parcel. So I put together this statement, which I'll read to the group. This is it's titled Kmart Parcel Update January 25, 2021. In the last Kmart parcel update, we reported a local business group had executed in early 2020 an option agreement to purchase the 6-acre Kmart parcel. We recently learned the local group decided not to proceed with the purchase of the Kmart parcel and let their option go. The town was subsequently informed by Ocean State Job Lot that the company had sent a letter of intent to purchase the Kmart parcel to Stop and Shop. Note, a letter of intent is preliminary to negotiations. It is not signed by the seller and carries no contractual force. The property remains on the market to other prospective buyers. On January 12, John Mangiarotti, Matthew Selby, Kristen Gouchard, and I met with representatives of Ocean State Job Lot. The gentlemen wanted to engage our interest and explain their plans to convert the 60,000 square foot former Kmart store into a 40,000 square foot Ocean State Job Lot store site. The remaining 20,000 square feet would be rented to another retailer or used as an Ocean State storage facility. Their plan included remaking the old McDonald's into a fast food chain restaurant. I explained that the Kmart site is the town's last available commercial parcel and is viewed by many in Acton as a very special piece of land. I added, with the improvements coming with the Kelly's Corner infrastructure project, the redevelopment of the Kmart parcel is the linchpin to a revitalized Kelly's Corner. I shared that the town would unlikely approve a zoning change to allow for large-scale housing on the parcel, and that many in the community would be very disappointed to see a successor discount store occupying the parcel. The Ocean State representatives reminded us they could, as a matter of right, and without zoning changes, repurpose as a matter of right, repurpose the store as a matter of right, and without any zoning, as a matter of right, and without zoning changes, repurpose the old Kmart parcel for their commercial use. We firmly and politely held our ground, and the meeting ended. We learned on Friday Ocean State withdrew their letter of intent to purchase the parcel. The Ocean State experience should remind us of our exposure to another discount chain store purchasing the parcel. And in the big picture, we have to recognize circumstances have changed. The pandemic has further underscored the unrealistic financial viability of standalone retail developments and restaurants. From a purchaser-developer's perspective, he or she needs to recover the purchase price of the property. In this instance, it would be in the upwards of $6 million, and turn an overall profit on the investment. We received inquiries from other developers. The proposed projects include a senior living / continuum of care development of 115 to 120 rental units and 10,000 square feet of research facility with a component for retail and restaurants. Another was a general mixed-use development of housing and retail using a repurposed Kmart building, and an assisted living memory care facility with 71 and 2-bedroom units with no plans for adding retail or restaurants. Now, the board may also consider an executive session, the town purchasing the Kmart parcel. So that's the update. Let's take board comments and questions first, and then let's open it up to the citizen. Dean.
Yeah, I'm troubled by the fact that Ocean State was met with such disfavor from you and members of the town staff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a bit of elitism going on here, that you denigrate discount stores. People need places to shop. People go to Ocean State Job Lot and they go to the other stores like that. And I think from an environmental point of view, it makes a lot more sense to have them here rather than have them drive to Hudson or Marlboro or wherever they're going. I know from my dealings with the folks at the Council on Aging, there was a lot of concern when Kmart closed because that store actually provided a lot of goods that seniors were interested in. I'm really concerned with the fact that it was met with such disfavor, and I'm drawing a parallel with the way a previous board basically shut down a couple of good options for the reuse of the McDonald's site, one of them being Panera, another one being 110 Grill, because they didn't fit with somebody's idea of the ideal development for Kelly's Corner. And as a result, now we've got a building that's been sitting there basically vacant for, 15 years, something like that. I don't think that does Kelly's Corner any good. I don't think looking at a vacant Kmart store does anybody any good. I think eventually, if these things don't get reused, we're going to be looking for people requesting abatements on taxes. And I believe the number that's been kicked around is about $100,000 a year in taxes that facility pays. So I think that it's very short-sighted to slap somebody down like that. And I also think, as far as looking for the ideal site, I'm looking around the members of the board here that I can see on the Zoom call, and how many of us have experience as retail merchandisers. And since I think that means none of us, I think we should probably rely on the private enterprise to decide what would make sense. There's already been an unsuccessful attempt to rezone that area. That didn't get anywhere. And as far as the town buying a property, I would submit that the town buying property and saying, well, we'll do something with it sometime later, has not worked out awfully well for us financially. So I'm really discouraged. And personally, from my point of view as a selectman, I would encourage retailers or anybody else that wants to occupy that space to come here, because we don't want the place to look like Maynard Center with a bunch of vacant storefronts. I don't think that's certainly not my image of Kelly's Corner. Thank you.
Well, I'm certainly cognizant of that concern, and we didn't, make those comments, dismissing that. It had come up as, I remember in 2016 when we were visioning and there was a rezone vote before the town meeting, and one community member got up and said, look, I use Kmart for regular shopping, and that hit home with me, and I'm certainly aware that there are quite a few people in town who use that for regular shopping, and many people who use a Kmart during the course of the year for odd items and other things that they need. But in the course of the discussions that we've had with respect to the infrastructure project, when we did make very clear this is not about about the Kmart parcel, what will happen to the Kmart parcel. The bookends of the conversation were, we don't want large-scale housing on the parcel on one extreme, and on the other extreme, it is too special a parcel for another discount store. And in the middle, what people most wanted would be some type of nice retail and a restaurant venue. Ideas have come up for a delicatessen, a true Irish pub, but I think we've got to focus on the fact that retail is really unrealistic and not viable, and you're not going to see developers paying $6 million for the parcel, and they're not going to be able to borrow the money to build a retail mall there. That's going to be very, very difficult, very pain. So I think we have to think some type of senior housing, and if it can be coupled with the compromise in it, what we can get out of it would be some level of retail and some level of restaurants as part of the package. And with one of and both of these proposals for senior housing, one is for about 70 units, one is for 115 and 120. The 115 and 120 was would carry retail and restaurants with it. But it's a very tricky business, and we've got with the colonial group out of it, we've really got to be thoughtful and be proactive, and if there, after community discussion, if there is something we should pursue, we should be active and pursue it, because you don't want something you don't want there. Jim.
I'm so glad we're opening up this discussion because it's been, every time I turn on any Acton Facebook page, there's often a conversation about the Kmart parcel. So I know there's a lot of built up questions and ideas and concerns about it. So my comments are, first of all, I think things may have shifted in terms of the general thinking about large-scale housing, especially if it's small, if it's affordable, either naturally or deeded affordable housing. We've discovered a new interest in finding ways to house people that normally can't live in Acton, including lots of people that work in Acton. So I'm much more open to a combination that includes housing there. I'm not thinking of large luxury condos. I'm thinking of small apartments. Included in that universe of options would be, like he was suggesting, if we actually have people offering us, talking to us about, a rental arrangement for seniors, with a bunch of units. I think that would be part of that vision for housing. So there's that part. The second part is I had the same reaction as Dean when I first heard that Ocean State job lot had been, sort of summarily turned down. And with some of that same reaction of like, there are plenty of people in Acton who really miss Kmart. The concerns I heard back were, which I also agree with, were, well, Ocean State job lot is different than Kmart. It's going to be a real competition for places like Acton Ace Hardware that we love. That is that's a small. It's owned by a local family. It's we don't want to chase that business out of here. So I understood that as an issue. I also understood that a big place like Ocean State job lot only works by being a regional provider. So that means it's not just for Acton. That's not how they make their money. They make their money by people coming from many, many towns around here, which on the one hand is good for generating tax money. On the other hand, it's a killer for the traffic there. And we're investing a lot of money and a lot of the state's money and federal money to make the passage through there more predictable and reasonable for cars, and to suddenly add a huge an establishment that relies on cars coming in from all over the state doesn't seem like a winning situation there. Similarly, I hear lots of people talking about the desire to have the town, buy the land and do something with it, like a community center. If Sudbury Road, for example, becomes not viable at the end of its 10-year lease, possibly because of the development right next door. Maybe it's a place for that, but I don't see the economics of that. I don't see the town putting $6 million in and having that be worthwhile. Although the only possible way through that I see is that we do have an EDIC. We do have an economic development investment committee that doesn't really have anything to do. They've been inactive for a long time, but they are, by their charter, they are capable of putting together deals, of assembling capital to find a way to do something, and that might be a fine project for them to take on. I think that's it. Thanks,
David.
Yeah. I think that this is myself not the place in town for senior housing, right? I've in general, and I think I've supported all the projects for senior housing around town, but I think this is not the place. This is kind of it's a commercial shopping area in Acton, and I would hesitate to rezone it for 150 senior apartments. I would be open to possibly mixed use, but I often find that mixed use is it would have to be done fairly in my mind. And by fairly, I mean not just a store on the bottom to allow you to build 100 apartments there. It has to be, in my mind, primarily stores. I'm also not in favor of the town purchasing the land. That's it's hugely expensive, and then we have these decisions again and again for what to do with it, and it's an impossible situation. So while I think that we need, I would love to see stores there. I would be open to certain kinds of mixed use. I would be open to mixed use and industrial retail, like the research facility, John, you spoke of. But I do also think that we're not going to be able to pick the stores that go in there. And I think it's unreasonable to have that expectation. I would love, John, like you said, to have an Irish pub and a deli there. That would be fine with me. But it has to be an entrepreneur who decides, right? What works there, what the town will shop at or restaurant at, and that kind of thing. So, I think we can set things up for them, but we can't, pick and choose the stores. And I'm not against actually a larger anchor store in some other stores either. A large anchor store and a smaller store and a restaurant, that sounds okay to me.
I just so I clear, I think my typing because there was the proposals that we've heard was a senior living continuum care development of 115 to 120 rental units, together with 10,000 square feet of retail and restaurants. And then there was another a 200,000 enlarging the Kmart building to a 200 square foot research facility with a component for retail and restaurants. And then there was a general mixed use development, and then there was another assisted living memory care facility with 71 and 2-bedroom units with no plans for adding retail. What you have to realize is, if these developers are going to pay $6 million for the parcel, they've got to make that back, and make a profit. And while people would the idea that I heard most of, we want, some very nice retail, a host of restaurants, that would be it. That would be ideal. I don't see any, developer now or for the next several years stepping up and wanting to invest in something like that. We could sit back and say, well, okay, we'll step back on this and see what happens. But, it may be wise to be proactive in this endeavor. And just, Jim, on your comments about, housing, that gets, very tricky. If you're talking, there's 40B, a friendly 40B affordable housing, building 175 units there. With if it's rental, you'd have 20%. People want, and I think they'd be reluctant to approve something like that. If we're talking about low income housing, people who are earning $40,000 a year. That's what 446 Massachusetts Avenue is. That's what Main Street is. You're not going to get your traditional developers who are going to want to do that. That is generally funded with federal and state funds and tax credits that are that are sold. So if you're thinking of something like that for the parcel, and I socially understand that, we're going to have to own the parcel, to do that. And, a way to do that is to go to Kmart and say, not to, to Stop and Shop and say, would you give us the parcel for $3 million? You could take tax credits. We want to put it to a good social use in the form of low income housing. I mean, that might be the way to do it. But you're going to have to do it that way. A traditional developer is not going to deal on that level. Dean?
Yeah, I think all of your comments about how so many of these things are impractical. It puzzles me even more why a Ocean State job lot that apparently was willing to pay the money for it, why they were so discouraged by the town. I think if there's a willing buyer out there that wants to come in there and it's not that different a use between what the Kmart was and what they were proposing, and certainly, I just go back to the boarded up McDonald's that we've been looking at there for 15 years. I just don't understand why folks in town hall, including yourself, headed them off. You've just gone through everything about why rezoning isn't going to work and why people can't afford. I'd love to have an Irish pub and a deli and all these other things, but until we have somebody that wants to do it, that is $6 million, that's not going to happen. So I think, there are some instances where I think the Board of Selectmen respectively should butt out of these things.
Well, yeah. Why don't we take some, take public comment now?
Okay. Marion Maxwell, please go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening, Marion.
Hi. You've had some wonderful discussions and very thoughtful comments. But I have to say, I do not want the town to buy any more property. And after hearing all of this discussion, I think I'm squarely with Dean. I really got all excited when you said Ocean State job lot, because it's more like Kmart. And speaking for a lot of seniors, a great many seniors, we miss Kmart so much. And the things that we have to buy that we would get at Kmart, we have to go on Amazon to get them. And I really am very sad that the powers that be discouraged Ocean State. I know there are lots of considerations that I'm not taking into account, but I'm just speaking for a number of us who would really like to see something like Ocean State. We're really unhappy that Kmart had to leave. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Marion.
Mike Majors, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a few comments. On one hand, I agree with Dean, like a bird in the hand is worth whatever. But on the other hand, it's for that site, we need to, if we did like a Ocean State job lot, it would be really a failure of imagination on the part of the town. I think what we really need to do, a lot of people have ideas what they would like to see there, but I think the town really needs to do an inventory of what they need. What businesses do they really need that they don't have now? And it could be something extraordinary, like maybe they need a barbershop, maybe they need a movie theater, maybe they need the Irish pub or the fancy restaurant, maybe a breakfast place. Maybe they need more office space, but I think they need to do the inventory of needs. What it is, what businesses don't we have that we would like to have? Another thought is maybe we could partner with Stop and Shop. They own the site, but we could be sort of a co-developer. Another option would be maybe move some of the businesses on the other side of the street onto that site to make a more concentric, diverse shopping experience, like the Point on Sano, even the bowling alley, and then that could also free up the other side of Kelly's Corner to be maybe a nice townhouse type environment for seniors. So there's a lot of things you can do if you just use some imagination, and maybe we need a public forum to, to get that kind of input. But I think, as John said, we need to be proactive on this site. And we need to do it quickly. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Others?
Yeah, Alyssa Nichol, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Alyssa Nichol from School Street. I just wanted to mention that I am in complete and total agreement with Dean, and I believe Joan, because I saw her nodding a lot when Dean was talking. So that is an unusual place for me to be. I want to echo that I think that discouraging Ocean State Job Lot because it is a discount store is elitist and classist. There are a lot of people who need discount stores in town, and if there isn't one in town, they need to drive out of town. I would prefer to have, a Target, but if Target hasn't come in and said we want to set up shop here, then Ocean State Job Lot I think is fine. And I know that we already have 3 senior housing projects in the mix. Mass Ave, Great Road, there's a 40B, Grandview, and also the Main Street project. And although Powder Mill is not specifically a senior project, it's 245 units in a building with an elevator and a pool, and that might be very attractive to seniors. So I would not want to see senior housing on the Kmart parcel, or Stop and Shop parcel, I suppose I should call it. The plan of a 40,000 square foot Ocean State Job Lot with an additional 20,000 square foot other retailer and fast food to sit in the McDonald's building sounds fabulous, and I concur that it's very disappointing that town staff and Chairman Benson discouraged that.
Other comments, please?
Kara, please go ahead.
Hi, it's Kara, and I echo Alyssa's concerns. I would prefer that we buy it. I love the idea that EDIC, I just did the numbers, we're talking about $26 a year to hold it, including both the tax impact and the interest on such a loan. And we don't even have to hold it. We can just approach Stop and Shop and do a deal. I think community center, retail, take a look at the survey that I put forth. I think people are willing to pay that. But if you guys as leaders will not be pursuing such a purchase and such a community investment, then I say I'm right with the Ocean State Job Lot. I think we should crawl over broken glass and beg them back. Thank you.
There's one more, John.
Okay, sure.
Sahana, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sahana Purohit, Blueberry Path. It was great conversations tonight. I wanted to actually just say a couple of sentences since I helped with the outreach to get the Kelly's Corner infrastructure project. It was a grassroots outreach that I was a part of. We talked to many people in town on the visions of the Kmart during this outreach. People certainly did not want another discount store there, and it did not belong to the character of this town. I understand the convenience of having a big box, but during all the conversations that we had in many living rooms across Acton, this is not something that people express to us. So it is actually a good idea, a good thing, the conversations that John Benson and the town manager had with Ocean State Job Lot. And it was probably a good decision. And I would like to see something better there for the Kmart parcel, given all the conversations that we've had with the people in the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone further? Okay, so is there any further, comments in terms of Do you want to think about it for a week and we could pick it up again next week? Jim?
Yeah, I think, having another week to hear from people would be good. And I think in the long run, or maybe even the short run, we do want we want to get a way of getting more structured feedback. The survey that Tara sent in is also a really interesting source of ideas and information. So I might recommend the board that it's sitting in your mailbox right now. It might be, there's some interesting ideas in there. The last two things I wanted to mention were, someone mentioned to me a place like GameStop that would have a large number of play areas inviting for both adults and kids, might be really appropriate right next to the schools there. If they're interested in making an investment in this area, that would be a great option. And finally, the last question I had was whether I know we have two more, at least we had two more elementary schools to rebuild over the next few years, and I wonder if relocating one of the elementary schools to near the rest of the campus might make sense. Last thoughts. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Remember with the experience that John and I have had over the last 2 years around the parcel with prospective developers is what they want to build is large scale housing. When we sat down with Stop and Shop in early May of 2019, would you join us on a friendly 40B for large scale housing? Because that's where there's a big residential market in the suburbs for rental housing, condominiums a bit less, and that's what they want to do. We met with two different developers over the summer. One wanted to put about 225 rental units on there. Another one was condominiums about 175 to 185, and that's what they're interested in doing. The stuff that we're talking about, the retail, games, they're not going to make their money back with that stuff. They're not paying, $6 million for it. And, that's the risk. So if you want to think that way, think about going, to Stop and Shop, asking them, would you take $3 million for this? And we can get in the development business, which I don't think is very wise. But, if you're talking about, low income housing, that's what you're going to have to do, together with a lot of these, other, ideas, which I think are great, but, they're just not financially viable. They're not realistic, at least not now or for the years ahead. And again, just on Kmart, or Ocean State, I'm very sensitive, to the loss of Kmart and what it provided for many in this community. But the more work that Sahana and I and others did, with people in the community about what would you like on the parcel versus what you wouldn't like. The bookends for what you wouldn't like are large scale housing and another discount store. And I think if we put that out there, we will hear that. That's not going away. But I'm not, to Mary Maxwell and Alyssa and Dean, I'm sensitive to the, to the idea of, what discount stores, do add. But, people's views of that, of that space, do not fall there. David.
Yeah, John, you were saying, should we take more time? Are we taking more time for a specific decision?
No, I mean, it's, we don't own the parcel, but if there are any of these developers, that, these ideas that you'd like us to pursue, we're happy, to do that.
So you're asking if we want to maybe at our next meeting take a vote of the board as to things that we would like to see or not see?
Well, get some sense, yeah. But I think I'd like to hear, certainly, citizen comment, because we've said all along, once we have a developer, we'd have public forums. The way the developers work on this, and it's something I learned today. What Stop and Shop wants is a firm price, and there's no contingencies. So you're buying the property. If you have to get your permits, that's on you. You own the property. And a developer is going to want some sense from us, is this what we're interested in? And for him to really make an offer, hopefully have the offer accepted, and during their due diligence period, when they could still back out, make a presentation to the town. And if the town says at that point, this is a lousy idea, we don't want it, because there's some permits that they'll have to get, they'll pull out at that point. But, we just can't bring these developers in, right now, and have them do their, do their presentations. They're going to want to have a purchase and sale agreement on the property and during their due diligence period. That's when they would present and see if the town is firmly behind it. That's the way the practice is. But I'm happy just to review the bidding again, because some of it got mangled in my text. One would be 115 to 120 senior rental units, which would be also include a continuum for assisted living and memory care within that 115 to 120. And that would couple with 10,000 square feet of rental, of retail restaurant space. And this is what this particular developer does. There was another broker on behalf of a client who proposed a 200 square foot life science research facility that did not include, marijuana research or development, coupled with some undisclosed amount of retail or restaurant space. It was a general sort of mixed use refurbishing the Kmart parcel with retail on one floor, housing on the above floors, and then another senior person with 70 1 and 2 bedroom units with for apartments and assisted living, no retail involved in it.
John, what will that housing do to the traffic at that intersection?
Well, if you're dealing with with seniors, I mean, the big concern is if you had large scale housing where you had families with kids, the kids would use the schools, there would be a lot of in-out. The way it's been explained, when you have seniors and assisted living and memory care, there's not a lot of traffic in and out. You would have it on the first phase, but in the later stages, you're just not going to have it.
Excuse me, John. I just want to say that there's one person with their hand up.
Sure.
I'm not going to call on you without your last name. So if you rename yourself to your first and last name, we'll consider calling on you. But thank you. That's all for right now, John.
Okay.
So you in a future meeting, you're going to want to get a sense of the board if.
And a sense of the the community. I mean, Jim, if you go out and and invite people to, to call in and participate and hear further on and hear further on Ocean State. I mean, if the communities changed their mind and said, hey, Ocean State's the simplest. It's part of an inclusive community. I would go back to them and apologize and say, on further thought, yeah, come on, David.
Well, I think one of the things about this Ocean State proposal, and I wasn't privy to it, so I don't know whether it was ideal or not, but it wasn't just Kmart like the old building was. It was what I would call, in mall terms, an anchor store, right? Ocean State with another store and a restaurant. And I think that's about as close as we're going to get to something that pays for itself, right? Maybe with some combination of, industrial retail, or something like that. But this was going to pay for itself, right? They were just going to buy it and pay taxes, and we didn't have to invest anything.
They would just clean up the site, put their new sign there, and they're open for business. They don't, it's zoned for that. They need no permits. But what they were talking about would be using 40,000 feet for their store, 20,000 feet perhaps for another store, or using the 20,000 for their storage, and to put on the McDonald's parcel another, a fast food type restaurant. They were not, interested in restaurants or
right.
Type of retail you might have in mind. We might have in mind. Jim.
No, I take it back. We're going to talk about this at another meeting. I'm happy with all the first three options you laid out. All seem reasonable, as does the Ocean State job lot proposal. So I'm open to a lot of possibilities there.
Well, test your constituency.
I think I have a more optimistic sense about the capabilities of an economic development corporation to develop the lot on our own. But I get that there's plenty of challenges there.
You just remember what the developers would like to do is large-scale housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or we've seen there's more of an interest in senior living with a continuum arrangement.
Yeah, 150 to 120 senior rental units seem like a not very expensive. That seems like that's small housing. That fits into stuff that we need in Acton.
And that includes the continuum in those units. With 10,000 square feet of restaurant retail.
Mm-hmm.
John, do you have anything?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I think it's an interesting discussion tonight, and I think that's a discussion that's been going on since, for a long time, since we heard Kmart was in trouble, right? And that we knew that was coming, and then it happened about a year ago. It's been vacant. The one thing that I think is challenging is that we have a surplus right now of retail. As I think was mentioned earlier, there is vacant storefronts on Great Road, vacant storefronts on several places where I think we're trying to do everything we can to support the businesses that we have here now, the smaller ones, to try to keep them going. And I'd be worried about what would happen if new competition came in to some of our smaller businesses that are barely hanging on right now. It's a community decision, of course, and I think if we called them tomorrow, they would come back. It's not like it's a business decision for them. They don't really have strong feelings about really what we think. So I think that it's something for me. Everything I've learned about Kelly's Corner since I started working here, that concept didn't lend itself to everything I've learned about what the community has been visioning for this community, for this site, and for this center of town. It's not consistent with anything I've learned about that. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. But I take my direction from the board. I'm happy to do what you all think is best.
John, there's one other person with their hand up. Actually, Sola Stratocase.
Hi, how are you this evening?
Hi, Sola.
I actually live on Main Street, and I just really wanted to urge you to reach out to the community because there are strong feelings, especially against any type of housing to be put there. And we do have, the concern that whatever goes in there needs to be sustainable. There is a lot of empty storefronts, and there are no large retailers here. There is nothing to kind of offset taxes from the residents. There needs to be somewhere for parents to go buy detergent. That's, not Roach Brothers that's going to charge you twice as much. I mean, it's just something that we need. And we are spending our money in other towns and going to other places and doing all our shopping in other places because there is nothing here. While a kid entertainment area is great, I heard that they're putting an Apex Center in the Maynard project. So that's going to, obviously have everything what Marlboro has. So I don't know that makes sense. So again, I would just urge you to reach out to the community and see what, they think is the best option. And I don't believe it's housing of any kind. Thank you.
Okay.
And there's, I'm sorry, John, one more person.
Go ahead, please.
Ann Corcoran, please go ahead.
I have been listening for discussions about Kelly's Corner and the Kmart property for years and years and years, a little too many years, I think. But one of the things that really intrigues me about the space is to break it up so that it was uniquely centered on young children. And it could have clothing stores for young children and play spaces for young children. And I think if my understanding is right, that we are growing astronomically, I guess, with housing, and those houses have to have young children in them. And we are looking for places for teens to go. Maybe it could be divided up into a teen center and a center where moms could come and the children could play, somewhat like a McDonald's playground, but cut above. And the parents could sit and watch their children. Just some creative developer has to think in that, and also have clothing and maybe consignment shops, and make it just centered that. If you have found a creative developer, you might be able to get something like that. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah. Ann.
Nancy, whatever.
Greg.
Thank you. That's all, John. Oh, sorry. One more. Do you want to do one more?
Sure. Please.
Tina Terry, please go ahead.
Tina, hi.
Hi. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I echo the previous caller, and I have 3 children and 2 teenage boys, and you see the teens after school, they're just like walking to Starbucks or they're hanging out at Bruno Isano, and it's just, they don't have a place to congregate. And I know it's just probably wishful thinking on my part, but I would love to see a space that we could have for, mixed age groups, as well as, inclusive of that teen population. But like Dean said, the Ocean State job lots that, they were interested in, wishful thinking goes out the window when you have somebody in hand saying they want to do something with the space. So just my 2 cents.
Yeah, Tina, one of, when we were looking at this a couple of years ago, one of the items that came up was let's have a developer build a community center for us. Well, it would cost about $15 million. There's no revenue coming in for the developer, only expenses going out. So, that's where it becomes, impractical for a developer. if the town, wants to, buy the parcel and maybe sell off part of it, and if the taxpayers, want to build a community center on the parcel, that's an interesting, idea. But we'll have to pay for it to build it, and then we'll have to, pay, year to year the operating costs of the parcel. That's a real discussion to have. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but the practicalities of it, and it's always trade-offs.
And Alyssa Nickel would like to speak again.
Sure.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up to say thank you for extending the discussion and for providing that additional information. Mr. Mangiarati, I was not aware of the elements of, the vision of the town and how that fit in, and that was why you had dissuaded the Ocean State job law offer. So that's very, very helpful to know. And Mr. Benson, I was also not aware of that survey that you had conducted that Sahana mentioned. And I don't know how old that is, but the information that I'm getting, I have to acknowledge, is biased because I see most often comments about the Kmart parcel on the Acton Parents Facebook page. So that is one subset of the town that is expressing opinions about no housing, and they really love a community center. I just saw a comment from Melissa Rear saying that she would really love a rec center there, but she's biased as the director of the recreation department. So community centers, I know that they're not impractical because we have to pay for them. And the other options that they talk about are discount stores like Target. So I'm happy to hear that you're considering once again the option of the town purchasing the parcel and coming up with some sort of arrangement, and that you're willing to go back to Ocean State Job Lot if maybe a more updated survey is done and you take the time to hear from constituents about what they want to go into that space.
Thank you, Alyssa.
That's all, John.
Okay. All right, so, Dean.
I'd like to move we adjourn.
No.
We've completed our business.
Okay, is there a second? Joan?
The Celtics are on.
Go for it. All right, so if David would just call the roll the last time.
Mr. Snyder Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Charter?
Aye.
Mr. Benson?
Aye.
And I'm also aye for adjourning.
All right, so we'll see you next Monday night. We have an executive session at 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.